I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Where's my notes on the... Good morning, everyone, and welcome to meeting number 3 of the Economic and Community Development Committee. I'd like to welcome members of the committee and visiting members. I see Councillor Ainsley. Councillor Ainsley, it's always a pleasure to have you. Morning, and thank you. And also the members of the public that are here in attendance with us today, and members of the media. I'd like to remind everyone here in the room that and others outside that you can follow the agenda and debate on your computers, your tablet and or smartphone at www.toronto.ca/council. The Economic and Community Development Committee acknowledges the land we are meeting on is the territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewas, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And it is actually home of many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississauga of the Credit. Are there any declaration of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. Members, I know that we've read this before. I'd like to do it again. I want to take a moment to remind members that when you declare an interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, MCIA, you are now required to file a written declaration with the clerk. The clerk has provided blanket forms to every member's office, and I would ask that you complete and bring them to the meeting each time you declare an interest on a matter. If you forget to bring your forms, the clerk staff can provide you with one which you should complete and submit before the end of the meeting. If you need more information under your obligations with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, I refer you to the Integrity Commissioner's Interpretation Bulletin. Guys, I'm just wondering if I can just have one meeting in the corner there, please. Maybe you want to take it outside. Thank you. I believe that the clerk has a few copies as well, and if you require advice, I would encourage you to seek out such advice directly from the Integrity Commissioner. So, members, moving right along. Again, are there any declaration of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Okay, seeing none. I'd like to ask for confirmation of the minutes from the March 6th. Councillor Lai, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have a number of speakers this morning. We have presentations, and we have, I believe there's some additional communications, Madam Clerk, that you submitted? Okay, communications have been handed out to members, so you have that, those in front of you. I would like now to vet the agenda. So members, if you have any interests on items, we will hold those particular items. The first item on our agenda today is EC 3.1, the appointment of City of Toronto's photo laureate. I will hold that item, and we will come back to that in a moment. The next item on the agenda is EC 3.2, Toronto On-Screen Industry 2018 Year in Review. There's a presentation, but I thank you. I think we'll end up doing that, and I'll hold that for you to move, Councillor Cressy. So I will hold it actually in your name. How's that, Councillor Cressy? Thank you. EC 3.3, partnership that produces best practice for international metropolitan agreements. Councillor Carroll, I'll hold that one? Yeah. Okay. Under your name. All right. EC 3.4, review of dementia care-based model. I will hold that item in my name, Chair. EC 3.5, City of Toronto's Refugee Capacity Plan. Councillor Carroll, do you have an interest in this one? Do you want to hold? That's all right. Okay, that's right. 3.5. But Councillor Carroll also had an interest. That's the speaker, so that's it. All right, so we will be holding that one in chairs. EC 3.6, noise bylaw review, proposed amendment to Chapter 591, noise. We will hold that. We have speakers on that item. Okay, members, we have EC 3.7, amendment to BLT Construction Service Inc., purchase order number 6047316 for the procurement and construction of a temporary respite facility. Councillor Cressy, how do you? Okay, Councillor Cressy is moving the items. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. EC 3.8, authority to enter into multi-year agreements with Toronto Arts Council. Councillor Grimes, Vice Chair Grimes is moving that. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. EC 3.9, this is a deferred matter that's back to us this morning from March the 6th. EC 3.9, appointments to Business Improvement Area Board of Management. Members, I had a request from both councillors Robinson and Cole requesting that there is further concerns regarding this particular matter and have asked that we further defer this to June. And so I would ask members to support the requests of the local councillors so that this particular matter can get additional attention. There are some correspondence, at least there's a letter from, I believe, members of the BIA here as well, but I'm going to move the request of the councillors to defer this particular matter until June. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. EC 3.10, appointments to Business Improvement Area Board of Management, Mount Pleasant Village and Upper Village. Vice Chair Grimes is moving the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. EC 3.11, Business Improvement Area BIA 2019 Operating Budget Report number 3. Councillor Lai is moving the item. Okay, Councillor Grimes would like to hold it. Okay. Thank you. Okay, EC 3.12, Toronto's Economic Bulletin.
Can I just ask a question? We have a bigger agenda today and lots of speakers, but just out of interest, we zipped through this. Do we have sort of a scheduled time in the year where we plan to walk through it in detail? Is there sort of an outlook that we're gonna do that? I'm not suggesting today because we got a long speakers list, but can we sort of look at what's the best time of year to do a deep dive into the bulletin?
Fair enough. Let me take that back and leave that with me, and I will deal with it with staff and so on. Okay, thanks. So you will move the item? Oh, sure. Okay. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. EC 3.13, Recreation Program Registration. It's a communication from Councillor Ainsley. Councillor Ainsley is here with us. It's actually pretty clear what he's actually asking for. I think it's a great request. It has huge impact. Councillor, did you wish to have a quick word on this matter? I would allow you to do that if you were fine. So Vice Chair Grimes is moving the request, and this is being referred back to staff. for further actions and to report back to us at a later date. May. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Let me go back to number 11, Councillor Grimes. Okay, thank you. Okay, back to EC 3.11, which is a Business Improvement Area BIA 2019 operating budget, report number 3. Vice Chair Grimes is moving the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. That matter's been dealt with. That was number 11. That's correct. Members, I'd like to now welcome visiting Councillor Fletcher. Good morning, Councillor Fletcher. Good to see you. Welcome. All right, we are moving back to the top of the agenda, members. EC 3.1, the appointment of the City of Toronto's photo laureates. So today is bittersweet. Today we bid farewell to the city's inaugural photo laureate, Jeffrey James, who has completed his term of service to the city, and we welcome the next laureate. The position of Toronto's photo laureate honors a photographer with outstanding talents and whose work focuses on subjects relevant to the people of Toronto. It is also the first of its kind, this position in Canada. The photo laureate promotes our thriving photographic art scenes, documents our city's history, and sparks community dialogue on complex issues through his or her work. During his time with the City of Toronto, Jeffrey has worked passionately to fulfill each of these duties. He photographed and curated 2 exhibits for Doors Open Toronto, including a spotlight on Young Dundas Square, a celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Prince Edward Viaduct, and the work of Toronto's first photographer, Arthur Gross. Jeffrey has delivered a series of public talks. These talks were held at Toronto Camera Clubs, the McLuhan Centre, and the Aird Gallery in celebration of Robert Burleigh's exhibit titled An Enduring Wilderness. He's also worked closely with the city's former poet laureate, Anne Michaels, on a legacy project that combines his photos of Toronto with her fictional interpretation. I understand that Jeffrey is not here with us this morning, unfortunately. Jeffrey, you will always surprise me, and thank you. I'm happy with this surprise. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to help me to ask Jeffrey to stand so that we can acknowledge his tremendous work. Jeffrey, come right in the center. Come right in the center here, Jeffrey. Come right in the center. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. And Jeffrey, my father-in-law says hello. Yeah. George says hello. Thank you. They are quite good friends. Now, I'm delighted to introduce the nominee for the city's second photo laureate, Michelle Pearson Clark. In recommending her appointment, the panel highlighted Michelle's ability to utilize photograph as a way to understand ourselves and each other and the remarkable city we call home. Michelle is a multi-talented artist known for her work in photography, film, video, and installation. In 2018, you would have seen her work, including at Here We Are Here, Black Canadian Contemporary Art exhibit, Musée des Beaux-Arts de Montréal. All that is left unsaid at LTD Los Angeles. Suck Teeth composition after Rashid Newsom at the Royal Ontario Museum, and a welcome wait on my body at Gallery 44. Michelle's writing has been published in Canadian Art, Transition Magazine, Momus, and in 2018, she was a speaker at the 8th TEDx Port of Spain event. Currently, Michelle is a lecturer in the Documentary Media Studies program at Ryerson University. She's also a finalist for the Toronto Friends of the Visual Arts 2019 Arts Prize. She holds a master's degree in social work from the University of Toronto, and she received her Master's of Fine Arts from Ryerson University, where she was awarded the Ryerson University Board of Governors Leadership Award and Medal, and the Ryerson Gold Medal for the Faculty of Communication and Design. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in welcoming the individual we propose to stand as Toronto's next Poet Laureate, Michelle Pearson Clark. Michelle? You going to take a photo, okay? Thank you. Very nice to meet you. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Very nice to meet you. We saw your work. We're going to get around and take a photo with you now, if we could. Thank you. So, members. Thank you very much, members. And we are, sorry, is this me? Right, yeah. So, who'd like to move number one, this item that we've just dealt with? Councillor Grimes? So, Councillor Grimes is moving the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right, members, we are now moving to EC 3.2, Toronto On-Screen Industry 2018 Review. We have Mr. Pat Tobin. Pat is the interim film commissioner and director of entertainment industries. He'll provide an overview of the impact of the film, television, digital media industry. Also joining Pat is Magali Simard, who is the Film Sector Development Officer. Good morning to you both. You're no stranger to this committee. You may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. We'd like to first offer our thanks to Deputy Mayor Thompson, all members of the Economic Community Development Committee for having us here today, but also for Council's ongoing support of Toronto's work to promote and grow its film industry. And that's what we're here to talk to you about today. Want to recognize in that context as well the ongoing efforts of the mayor to include continued engagement with our colleagues in California. More news coming up about that soon. And the most immediate past chair of Toronto's Film, Television and Digital Media Board, Councillor Fletcher, who's here with us today, who's been an outstanding champion for the sector for a number of years. As Deputy Mayor Thompson noted, my name is Pat Tovino, accompanied by my colleague Magali Samard. I'm interim Film Commissioner and Director of Entertainment Industries until such time as in a week we'll be welcoming Marguerite Pigot, who will be joining us as the Permanent Film Commissioner and Director of Entertainment Industries, and we look forward to introducing her to all of you and Council. I'll make some introductory remarks about the film sector writ large, and Magali will take you through the details. The main purpose today is to present you with the economic impact of Toronto's screen-based industry in 2018. The key messages that I want to leave you with are the 2018 numbers return us to a historic high in terms of the total spend in film and screen-based production in Toronto. We had a slight dip in our 2017 numbers, so we're back to the levels that we saw in 2016 of around $2 billion, and Magali will break that down for you in some detail. This has a number of underlying features that are very important to recognize. We're seeing growth across many components of the film industry, so it's diversified growth that is in many ways sustainable across domestic production, international production, as well as post-production. And the overall trends bode well, assuming the significant factors in the environment, the Canadian dollar, the Ontario tax credit regime, and the border remain as favorable as they are today. We expect to see this industry continue to grow and create jobs for Torontonians. The most significant factor there, which has to date been a limiting factor in our growth, is the ability to expand production capacity in this city, principally through sound stages, some post-production capacity expansion. And we're happy to note that a significant number of projects will be coming online through the efforts of this council and its championing of this sector in the next 2 years. Importantly for the mandate of this committee, what will follow are hundreds of well-paying, secure jobs for Torontonians. And that will be a focus of our work at Economic Development and Culture, is to ensure that the labor market is ready to assume the growth in these opportunities. And just finally, to leave you before I pass it over to Magali with some of the highlights of our work ahead of us as Marguerite Pigot joins us next week. One, will continue to work hard to promote the jurisdiction, including through trade missions, and secondly, through close working relationship with the film sector and its key stakeholders. In that capacity, we look forward to reconvening the Toronto Film, Television and Digital Media Board in the very near future to do that in a formal fashion. We will also be working very hard as production expands, both location shoots across our city in each of your wards, as well as that work undergoing in studios, to ensure that the film industry and its impact is understood as beneficial to Torontonians, and that we take any of the minor irritants that can accompany film production out of the system by ensuring a film-friendly city, working with each of you and working directly with residents. And finally, as noted, we're going to work hard to develop the workforce. These are hundreds of jobs coming online in the low-end estimates provided to us by the unions. They are, again, well-paying jobs. They are secure jobs in this economy, and we'll work to ensure that all Torontonians, particularly youth from priority neighborhoods, from diverse backgrounds, have an opportunity to access these jobs in the future, and we'll work with our partners in the city on targeted workforce development initiatives to do so. So at that, I'll pass it to Magali.
Thank you, Pat. Councillor Thompson, committee. So I'll go with you through the details of those very large numbers that we throw around this wonderful industry. As Pat said, we're back to $2 billion. To be more precise, it's 1.6, but of course we round that up to a perfect 2. When we say this number, we mean long format television series, we mean feature films, we mean non-scripted reality TV, commercials, any music videos, student projects. It's everything that's made in Toronto. That growth has been experienced in all of those formats that I just described. You have here the chart that showcases that. We'll go in a bit of more details. That growth, as Pat mentioned, is pushing to its limits and then pushing us to think of the next 3 years in terms of growth. So the numbers we're seeing today are very likely to grow in the next few years when we meet again at committee. Key projects that you've seen on our streets, perhaps in your wards, and certainly on screen, include Star Trek Discovery, The Handmaid's Tale, American Gods, Schitt's Creek, Condor, and It, all shooting here in the past few years and coming back with their sequels. We're very good at landing those major titles and then getting them back through a great experience in Toronto for their major sequels. In fact, yesterday, the sequel for The Umbrella Academy was announced by Netflix, so we're, of course, working hard to get Umbrella 2 here as well. And major new projects included, other than that one, Shazam, which comes out this Friday, Titans and October Faction, which you'll see on your screens later this year. On the next, we see the year-over-year trend for total production investment. These are numbers you might be familiar with. We're back in full force after a slight dip in 2017 as we were adjusting through some studio loss, reopening of studios this year, and just landing some of the largest projects we've ever had. What we will see in a few minutes is the fact that we have an equal amount of projects, but the projects are starting to get bigger. So larger budgets per project, that means a larger total in the end with lesser total amount of projects. Now, we wanted to break it down for you to see a bit more of a breakdown of that $2 billion and how that comes alive in the different types of projects being made here. So here we have physical production and post-production separated. We have feature films. So you'll see on 2018, all feature films, TV series, and commercials are all up from previous year, and most of them back to their highs of 2016, also shown in millions of dollars. And we wanted to separate the VFX and animation numbers first and foremost because those numbers can be calculated separately. And we also wanted to shed a spotlight on this sector within the film sector. VFX animation and computer-generated images are in huge demand. So as physical production grows, so does the demand for computer-generated images. The City of Toronto used to typically mainly land projects for physical, and then you would hope that they would also post here and VFX and animate here. And what we're seeing as a new pattern, which is an amazing one, is we can now really pitch and win projects for post only. We'll never be able to win a project that needs to be shot in a desert, but we can post it here because we have the best companies working on that. So just very, very recent ones that Toronto won for post only are Stranger Things 3, sorry. I love this show, don't know why I'm baffled. And The Haunting of Hill House, both total smash hits, especially on OTT services. So we wanted to shed a spotlight at $332 million, and that's, I encourage everyone to see, we'll circulate it. CASO, the Computer Animation Studios of Ontario, just released a study on the field of VFX and animation. It really showcases what Ontario is doing, what opportunities lie, and that very fast growth. You need less physical space to grow VFX and animation, and that's something that stands to grow fairly quickly here. On the next one, foreign and domestic major productions. Major productions in this case means feature films and television series. This really showcased a growth on both sides, which is something we always, both we and by the great we of the industry at large, this is something to always be very careful around. It's amazing to attract foreign direct investment for major American projects or foreign projects that are non-American, but the true crucial part of something that really points to stability forever is your domestic industry. So these numbers show a very healthy local industry, amazing Canadian projects being made by Canadians, and our amazing Canadian artists and Torontonians working on these American projects. It creates this kind of perfect win-win loop of working on Star Trek, for example, one of the largest shows on Earth, and then bringing that expertise back to a set of a Canadian show. So I think we're starting to very much see that on screens for CanCon. Location filming, which is something that interests, I think, everybody in this room. is how much activities are throughout the city, how much is shot in the wards. I just want to point out that we've now have numbers for each and every ward, how much with your new boundaries, what that means for you. And that's something we're circulating and meeting with many councillors about. In 2018, we issued over 3,200 permits for shooting on Toronto Street. That represents over 1,400 projects. So that means every single day, today again, there's way more than one production going on our streets. And that translates, to over 6,300 days of film shoots. So it's very significant. As I pointed to earlier, lower amount of shoot days, which means larger projects and more efficient ways of handling sets and film units outside. The growth that these numbers are bound to grow in the next few years as we grow studio space and workforce and get to attract even more of the high quality projects we've currently have had on our turf. And our first and foremost challenge and opportunity here is to work with council and to work with residents and to work with industry to make sure that that growth is managed properly, that neighborhoods never get burned, and that everybody sees the win-win of an industry like this, a creative one being here in Toronto. And we finish as is. This is a picture from Shazam, one of the largest feature films ever made here. The biggest one this past year that we did a preview screening about 10 days ago. It's amazing. It comes out on Friday, and it's bound for great success and probably a sequel. So we're in good shape. And scene. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Visiting councillors first. I'll start with Councillor Carroll before. Councillor Fletcher, questions? Yep. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. We'll just take this into committee now. Councillor Carroll.
Yeah, I'm cheating a little bit. I have the CASO study here. Probably the members haven't looked at it because they didn't put it on our agenda so that we could read it beforehand. But I understand it's on CASO's website. This might be a question for once we have the permanent film commissioner here, and maybe we'll come back to it then. But I am blown away. We have this post-production scene starting, particularly with visual effects and animation, and I see that most of the workforce is coming from our programs, from our post-secondaries, which is what we hoped for. But my question is, how many firms is it? Are firms coming in here and saying we better have a shop in Toronto? And if not, do we have the potential, now that they know the talent we're graduating, to maybe have a post-production cluster where we're drawing some of the people that are in New York and LA and beyond into, maybe we need to have a shop in Toronto?
Yes, Kev. Absolutely. This is one of the sectors or subsector of within our sector that we're trying to address the most, given the fact that the talent is very much from here. All the firms that are I would say, the most performing one or the largest one that produce the most amount of those post projects are most of them Toronto firms or Canadian firms that operate and started here. And each and every one of them work with the academic institutions that produce this amazing talent. We're in touch with quite a few companies, foreign companies, that are interested in setting up shop in Toronto in the post world. And something that we realized in all of our, I would say, active pitching about this industry and why you should come to Toronto, we now really up the factor of post-production more than we have in the past. It was very much concentrated on physical production and what we have to offer here. And to offer that, Toronto is now very much known, and we're very happy to, all of us, promote Toronto as a tech sector. But we've yet to make that link for that industry at the same rate as, say, the tech sector has done for itself. So we really want to link to people to say, like, there's great tech people, a lot of those tech people apply to the screen industries, and to kind of make that tie together. Oh,
okay. That's where I was going, because that would, the true acid test would be, New York often, they're a partner on a production, so it seems like an American film, but all they're doing is using DuArt. So do we have productions where all that's being done in Toronto is the post-production? Because that would be real growth. If we could, we could max out how many location shoots we could have going, max out studio space, but then also have productions that are just in town using our post.
Yep.
Are we headed there?
We do, and we have a lot of productions that do both physical and post here. And I will say, we're talking a lot about companies coming here, but some of the major companies in Toronto have offices in LA, so it's even like our talent being pushed out there. It's not just us attracting it.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, that's a great sign.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the heels of Councillor Carroll's question, I was going to get the same answer, but we always hear about the dollar. You mentioned in your deputation about the dollar. At what point is the dollar not going to make a difference anymore? So, you know, the dollar is down, but as these producers come in with suitcases full of money and ready to spend in Toronto, they see the experience in Toronto, New York, LA, Toronto now, Chicago's behind us. At what point is the dollar not going to be a factor for Toronto?
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Grimes. And it relates back a bit to what Councillor Carroll asked. It's becoming less significant. The most significant assets for Toronto, not to look past a really competitive tax credit regime administered by the province, but it's the quality of the labor market and the increased expansion of capacity being funded by major multinationals. So those are our single biggest assets, and they hedge against any fluctuation in the dollar that might work on the edges of the numbers when you're determining where you're going to shoot. And just to loop your question back to Councillor Carroll's, that is a really encouraging prospect that we're seeing the integration of tech and our post-production. We're seeing incredible innovation from some of our local firms like Shaftesbury, DeGero, who are creating world-leading hardware to serve this industry in its broadest possible sense. And we're seeing the integration of tech and screen-based, such as the recent opening of Shopify's studios in Toronto. So all these big signals bode really well for us. And a feature of the upcoming mayor's mission to LA will in fact be sitting down with some of the larger tech firms who are looking at these integrated plays as potential investments in Toronto.
Great. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Grimes. Just a few for me. You talked a little bit about this in terms of youth and engagement and opportunities and so on in the industry. We've been talking about it for quite some time, and I don't think we're at a capacity at this point where our reach is sufficient. I'm just wondering, especially on the broader diversity piece, we have lots of young people who are actually interested in this sector, however, either don't understand how to get onto the on-ramp or don't have any other information to help them to make informed decisions and so on. I'm just wondering, in collaboration with, obviously, the sector industry partners, what can we do more? What should we be doing more? What have we not been doing in order to, if you will, address this really important issue?
I'll start off. Excuse me. Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. I'll start and then throw to Megali. What can we do is ensure that the pipeline of talent that we have is as seamless and well supported at all segments, so that we are taking advantage of opportunities as they come online, and these will come online relatively quickly. So for example, we focused on an XOTO in schools initiative with the TDSB to have co-op placements in the film industry to awake kids to the opportunity in film. We're looking at the number of really strong community-based programs that develop youth first as an engagement opportunity, but then as a labor market development opportunity. We're partnering with one organization we hope to announce soon. Is a very high-functioning community player in this space, POV 3rd Street. And we find that given the interest in labor market development and the diversification of the labor market, we're seeing other funders, be they federal, the United Way, come to the table to support us, and we hope to be able to make some announcements in that regard soon. And post-secondary continues to be a big focus of this as well. Megali touched on a lot of the provincial interests. We think going forward we'll be looking at the community colleges and the university and college network and how they feed the pipeline of talent into the film industry.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to add that on all these initiatives that we have started in this past year and are about to start a second chapter of this year, the key component is there in those programs is to work with the industry and to work with the unions that are ultimately going to absorb a lot of that workforce. We are hyper conscious of the fact that Toronto is very diverse, but the industry, like on sets, it's not yet there for Toronto. We all know that this is absolutely the right thing to do, and will only elevate the kind of projects we'll be able to do, attract, and speak to. And I would say the Canadian industry and the American industry turn to us for those questions. I think they are expecting that of us, and that's what we want to deliver to them. It's actually one of our updates for the LA mission this spring will be around this topic.
And a second component part of that, I mean, I've spoken recently to a number of actors, if you will, who are from a very diverse background. The complaints that they bring to me and my attention is that while the industry is growing here, their ability to grow with the industry doesn't seem to be keeping pace. Either A, that the talent are brought in, even sort of, you know, third degree talent are brought in, as opposed to utilizing some of the wonderful talent that we actually have here in the city and in Canada as a whole. I'm just wondering, what's the narrative of the discussion that we should be engaging as part of our efforts, and we will be going to Los Angeles very shortly with the mayor's delegation. We need to be bringing these matters forward in a very appropriate way in order to have these discussions. So what are the thoughts and suggestions that you would offer?
Well, there's always, thank you, there's always requirements, minimum requirements for actors in Canada, that you need to have a certain amount of actors in Canada if you're going to come shoot here. That being said, it's very rarely the top 12 actors on a show that are required to do so. So, you know, with questions of diversity, usually comes attitude of playing it safe. And unless we put the people we want to put forward in front of those people and do more showcases of the talent that we have here to them, that's our role. I think we work with ACTRA very well, and they've worked very well to start promoting increasingly their diverse actors, and that's something we need to do more of. They do showcases in Los Angeles, they do showcases here, and bring showrunners and casting agents up here for those purposes, and perhaps that's a role we should up with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions. Oh, Councillor Lai, you have a question? Councillor Lai has a question.
As new to the committee, I just wanted to find out whether we are going to do a lot of initiative to keep this industry competitive. What are we doing to do that?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, thank you for the question, Councillor Lai. The City of Toronto is focused on creating an enabling environment across multiple fronts. So we've just spoken about our focus on ensuring that we have best-in-class crews on a global scale, and we really feel that we do. The city is able to market that strength through such recognition as The Shape of Water, winning a number of Oscars recently. And we need to keep that pipeline fed so that we are always renewing that and ensuring that the diversity of that workforce reflects the diversity of the city. We also need to ensure that it is easy to film here, and that is city work across multiple fronts, ensuring that the residents of Toronto recognize the benefits and accept what inconveniences may accompany film shooting, and that we also have film-friendly streets in terms of the design, traffic planning, et cetera. We need to work really closely with other jurisdictions, such as the province and the federal government, who administer tax credit regimes, to ensure that they reflect what the needs of our local industry are. And the city certainly, and looking at Councillor Fletcher, has a significant role in championing the industry, promoting it to jurisdictions. It's a really competitive global business, and we rely on all of you and the mayor to help us send that message that Toronto is open for film and is a world-class jurisdiction to shoot in.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. Thank you. To speak, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Film Office. This really is exciting to get back up to the $2 billion mark, having dipped, and really underscore the importance of this industry to Toronto. We know there's the 3 Fs of industries: food, finance, and film, the top 3 industries in the city. And film is proving itself to be, again, such a strong contender for creating and maintaining the economy in the city. I will just say about the tax credits that while we don't offer tax credits, we do advocate for tax credits. And without the tax credit, there would not be a film industry in the city of Toronto. It's used very, very well, coupled with the incredible professionalism of our crews and our actors and everybody in the industry. It allows us to be extremely competitive in what Mr. Tobin has said is a highly competitive international industry. And that is one of the things the Film Board did, was highly advocate for the tax credits. The Film Ontario, of course, is the lead for that and doing an excellent job. We did have our strategic plan last time, and just commenting on a few things that are still rolling out and very important. Having the proper studios and great studios is just number one for the industry, and I know Councillor Grimes now has all the Kipling studios in his ward, and Titan Studio is going to be opening very shortly. There'll be a big one opening on Toronto Port Authority. We've saved a number of them from the Don River the new Don River was going through 2 big studios, so we've managed to shift them over further to the east in the more industrial part of the Portlands. I think that focus on digital is very exciting. When we started the Film Board 4 years ago, we didn't even have digital in the title, and now digital is being recognized as the new wave, the up and coming, and it is where most of the younger workforce actually is situated, and it is very diverse. I will just note that Councillor Thompson talking about the diversity of the industry, that ACTRA as one of the main drivers of the Film Board and making us so successful with fantastic actors in Toronto, has launched a very strong diverse workforce approach, and in fact brought people from LA to see how they are very consciously going out to recruit all of the great talent that might not have been recruited or have been overlooked in the past. As far as workforce development is concerned, it is number one, because you can't have all these studios in action without having people to do it. So no sense getting all the films here and then people just simply can't do the job, or do the job to the level that firms are expecting when they come to Toronto. So that is really important. The unions and guilds are on board for that. The community colleges are on boards for that. We just need more relationships. Last year, we did have a XOTO school. So the XOTO brand is something that you see everywhere in the bus shelters. You see it on film shoots. And it is Toronto Loves Film, Film Loves Toronto. That's the idea of this brand, XOTO. We did a great project with the Toronto District School Board where there have been 15 co-op students go through, and these are kids at risk, very much focused on students, high school students at risk, in order to get onto a set, get attached to a union or guild, and develop skills. And some have gone on to be into the film industry. So we're considering that's a very exciting project that needs to be built a little more. And I do want to really thank Mr. Williams. Is he here? He's not. Is he there? Right behind me. Oh, I could feel those eyes boring into the... that barely being such a champion of making sure this is going to work. So the other one is looking at, for brand new developments, starting to build in some of the things that would make filming industry easier. So all the cables that go across the streets, all of the things that now disrupt the entire street, we're looking at ways of making that easier and more seamless for neighborhoods, because Toronto's neighborhoods are where so many film shoots take place, as you can see. And lastly, I just want to say it was an honor to chair this board over the last 4 years, and to just really and truly thank Mike Williams, who is just relentless in making sure the industry stays strong, and our former commissioner, Saib Sheikh, who's gone to Los Angeles to be the consul general there, which isn't a bad thing for our industry either, having him there. And of course, Magali is just 100% star and keeping everything moving down in the office. So it's a great gig we have going here. So let's just keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I gave you a couple of extra minutes as being the former chair.
I
so
truly appreciate that.
you're welcome. Thank you. All right, members of the committee, I'll take this matter into committee. To speak is Councillor Carroll.
Yes, really, it's just to put some fine points on what Councillor Fletcher has said. I was asking the questions about post-production to highlight that this is what we hoped happened when we started the film board, was that we would be a full-service place, not just a location place. And to me, the acid test will be when it's the post-production is a cluster, because it provides employment to all of our post-secondary institutions overlap in their tech training with this. And so to see that 55% of the people working in there graduated those institutions means we were on the right track long ago, and it's bearing fruit. But we'll know when we get to the point when film's not even shot here, come to Toronto to use our post-production. And it sounds like that's even happening. So even having a film board was brilliant. Time to get it started back up again in its new form. And I just to put it into perspective, because often people think, oh, film sector, it's a downtown issue, it's a waterfront issue. My husband is freelancing this week. And my husband's not a young man. That means we have to keep going and getting more of those young people in. It means there's so much going on that they have to take television workers who have full-time jobs and grab them to do freelance for a couple of days to fill out the roster on productions. That's a real sign of health in the sector, but it means that we also have every right to be demanding of the unions working in the industry and the production firms working in the industry that they need to help us make sure that young people do have an on-ramp, as our chair has described it. We've got to put that card in their hands, because some of the workers that built the industry up, like the people that my husband has worked for, both as a full-timer or as a freelancer, we're all baby boomers. So we want to be building up that young talent. It seems like providing the programs to get them there. We want to see them full-fledged members of IATSE and the other collectives that are creating this industry. So that's just to put a visual on it. People from the suburbs are working in this industry, and people who soon won't be working at all are in this industry, and they need to be replaced by our youth. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Grimes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. And being the beneficiary of a award that is absolutely massive in the film industry now, I'm giving my friend Councillor Fletcher over there a little run for money, but it's a friendly rivalship. Councillor Fletcher comes out, any studio. It is. And any expansion at CineSpace, Councillor Fletcher's there, and she's a big supporter of this industry. But, you know, William F. White, a massive employer, CineSpace, and I invite any councillors that really want to see what's going on in the industry, go out there for a tour. I've toured there through a few times. But, and on Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Thompson's question about getting the youth involved, as I went through there and had the full tour of CineSpace and the opportunities for the youth to get involved, and I went through one of the, where they make costumes, costume design, and I said, that's something, you know, a kid coming out of school wouldn't even consider to even know that it is an absolutely amazing industry to get involved in. That's just one small little aspect of it. What's out there for our youth to get involved, Councillor Thompson. So, Councillor, you'd like to go through a tour, I'd like to set that up for you. You really have a look at what's happening and how massive this industry is, and it does affect our communities, but on a very small scale when people really look at the major impact that's happening. So congratulations on this report, and hopefully it gets up to $4 billion in a very short time. That Canadian dollar will not really make a difference. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Grimes. Councillor Lai.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very happy to see this report, and because, and I also learned something that the 3F industries in Toronto, as one of them being film. Because when I was, when my two children are younger, they were extras. Oh. So I actually sat with them on the set, and then it really was, you know, when they would become not even youth, they are already being paid for what they're doing here, and I think it's a very good industry. And then at one point I see it very, and then slow down a little bit, and I really wanted to see it boom, because I think it's a very good economic generator here. And as a matter of fact, yesterday I have a client from my real estate. Before I was a councillor, I was in real estate. I have clients that was catering to all these big sets and all production for films, you know, on Netflix and on all these nice film locations. And yesterday I got actually requests on scouting some of those locations. But I really wanted to, I'm very happy to hear that there's tax credits giving out, and very, very encouraging and incentive. And the reason I asked that question about whether we are competitive is because, I really wanted our city to stay competitive. And I really applaud to all the good work that everyone has been doing here. And I hope to be able to, if you need any help or anything, I'll be more than happy to just reach out to me, and I will be able to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lai. Councillor Grimes, you had a point
Councillor
of
Thompson, I
order.
forgot to say something I wanted to say. I was at a function on the weekend. Councillor Cress, you want to hear this? I was at a function on the weekend. A friend of mine brought this lady up, an older lady, Italian lady, and she said, "Do you know who this is?" I said, "It look familiar," but it was the lady from the IKEA commercial, Tutta Fuori, the IKEA, everybody out. So I was so excited to meet her, but I got a chance to talk to her friend that was telling me the story, how it came. So they went out for a screening, and the producer was looking for an Italian lady. So go up to Woodbridge, we're going to put this out. They found Madalena, and they said, "No, we're looking for more. This is who we're looking for." And she's been in a number of commercials. She was never an actress, but now she's big news. So I got to meet her on the weekend. I was so excited. Tutta Fuori, but my favorite commercial. I forgot to say it at the end. Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Grimes. Members, I just wanted to offer my thanks and congratulations to the wonderful staff at EDC and the leadership of Mike Williams and so on. But I also want to say there has been a very persistent person who has gone beyond the call of duty, and that person is Councillor Fletcher. Because she has been tenacious, to say a word, in order to ensure that this industry not only survive, but basically elevate itself in terms of what we had always planned for it. There was a time in this industry where many of us, both internally in staff, external partners, Film Ontario and others and so on, who are working really hard to ensure that those tax credits that we talk about, that they were actually maintained, because there was a time when they were going to be essentially wiped out, and that would have wiped out the industry, which we've seen now grown into the thousands of people who are actually generating great income from this industry. This industry as well, through the leadership of many, has now spanning right across the city. There was a focus in certain areas of the city. I can tell you that even in my own ward in Scarborough, we now have facilities there where some of those facilities that were buildings that were dormant for some time are now being utilized for film and commercials and television. There are many homes in my area, in my ward, and I suspect all of us, where filming is occurring. We get those daily updates as to what's taking place in our community and so on. And those are very helpful, by the way, because that helps us to deal with residents. We've had some pushbacks as well from residents about noise, about issues relating to just the volume of vehicles and so on, and the effect that it has had on the community. And I think the film office has played such a great role in terms of balancing interests. And really, it's what it's all about at the end of the day. No matter how many matters we have, it's always a balance of interests. And we all don't get what we want, quite frankly, but we do the best we can, because at the end of the day, it's for a greater good and creating opportunities and so on. I did want to sort of get back to the point I made earlier about the need to ensure that many of our young people are really engaging. And I know a lot of work's being done, but like everything else, we have to continue to work on it to ensure that we not only reach the critical mass or get the capacity, that we widen the tent of inclusion so that more people are involved and more engaged. The actors who have raised issues with me have done so in a way that really suggests that while some are getting work, it appears that the level of work that they're getting really doesn't match their own overview of their talent and so on. And these are talented people in the industry. While we don't get to decide, I think that we do have a role to play in terms of expanding the discussion to ensure that we can include more and a diverse group of people in the industry and so on. Again, we're not trying to be heavy-handed in our approach, because we want to ensure that while the industry grows, we appreciate that, but we also want to lift everyone else to ensure that those who have an interest in this business are given or afford opportunities to be able to excel and to expand their talent and so on. We know that the industry is such that everyone wants to be entertained. Entertainment is a great thing, quite frankly, or just allowing yourself to be captivated or moving out of your normal day-to-day life where you can dream, you can look at opportunity and so on. All of those people, the actors and young people, also want to dream about opportunities for themselves and so on. So I think we have an obligation to help them. I'm really supportive of the fact that we are going to do more, and we all want to work together. So congratulations to everyone, and I would like to simply move the item. The item is slated to be received for information. I'd like to do so, and all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, members, we are moving right along to our next item, which is EC 3.3. Yes. Thank you. Partnership that produces best practice for international metropolitan and agreements. And we see Mr. Smout is here. Lee, good morning. If you would take the floor and introduce Riley as well. So you have the floor, and you're no stranger to this environment. So great to see you and welcome.
To the Chair, thank you very much for welcoming us, Deputy Mayor Thompson and councillors. We're pleased to be here today. My name is Lee Smout, Executive Director, World Trade Center Toronto, and my colleague is Rally Chakarova, Policy Director at the Toronto Region Board of Trade. And I'm going to hand over to Rally to introduce the subject, and I'll come back with some proposals towards the end.
Thank you so much, Lee, and thank you for having us here today and allowing us to share our research on this important topic. This is my first official presentation to the city, so it's particularly exciting for me. We also want to thank the Deputy Mayor, for his ongoing work to promote Toronto at the global stage, as well as Mayor Tory's work and a lot of the members of council here. The board and the World Trade Center Toronto's primary goal is to make the Toronto region one of the most competitive and sought-after business regions of the world. To give you a little bit of background on this report, with a generous grant from the JP Morgan Foundation, we were asked to complete two tasks. One was research to make suggestions on how to improve global cities' relationships, and that was produced in the form of this report. And the second was a pilot agreement that was based on those principles. So since you've had a chance to, you have the full report that you can reference, I'll just quickly highlight some of our main points and then turn it over to Lee. So the starting premise is that free trade agreements open the door, but city-to-city partnerships are a way to leverage that access with strategic connections, especially in what tends to be a very uncertain global trade context at the moment. Sister city partnerships were originally created following World War II. They're formal and structured, usually written agreements with the most common goal of creating economic growth. The board's research and consultations found 5 best and, quite frankly, very straightforward practices for effective partnerships that generate successful results. Now, while these 5 principles can be applied to sister-to-sister relationships, they can also be applied to any relationships as part of city-building institutions. The first one is clear and consistent selection criteria, and for us, this is the starting point. It can be common city commonalities, or priority industrial ties, or target international market, as well as the objectives that a city hopes to accomplish, such as Transform Toronto, Vision Zero, or waterfront development. The second is alternative partners. Partners strengthen and amplify the relationship. They can include education institutions, industry organization, economic development organizations, airport, ports, specific businesses, really anyone who's in the best position to advance the outlined objectives. The duration of the agreements is a very important one. It creates a deadline for activities to be completed, as well as a decision point at which the accomplishments and partnerships can be evaluated to either continue or sunset the agreement if it no longer serves the objectives. Cities are moving away from generalized agreements towards detailed ones with focused goals and activities, measurable outcomes, dedicated resources, outlined partner responsibilities, and thorough reporting. A good guideline is the SMART project management principles, where objectives are specific, measurable, assignable, resource, and time-bound. The last is robust policy frameworks, which guide the international activities and relationships and should align with the municipality's overall vision, as well as ideally coordinate across citywide activities. As the committee will know, the International Alliance Program guides these activities for the City of Toronto with a budget of just under $1 million. Currently, the city has more than 26 agreements. But since the program and its policy framework was created in 2001, I think you'll all agree the city has changed quite dramatically. We've added $120 billion to our annual GDP, 1.2 million to our population, and we've risen from a second-tier city to a global one. As a result, it merits that the policy framework be updated for the International Alliance Program to reflect the city's new global status and leverage it to achieve the new strategic goals set out by this council, as well as the many opportunities presented by the new economy. The following 10 recommendations mirror closely the 5 principles I've discussed already, but there are 2 I would like to draw your attention to, and that's the number 3 and 4 on the screen. Currently, the city's MOUs fall just outside of the city's program policy framework. Our suggestion is to include the MOU class as part of the existing partnerships of the program. And following that, our recommendation is to review the 26 plus agreements, as the city has done in the past, especially in 2005, to review the 37, I think at that point, partnership agreements following amalgamation. And then decide whether they should be reclassified or sunset if they no longer meet the city's updated criteria and objectives. We would also suggest to prioritize 2 to 3 partnerships per year, and that will ensure that those partnerships are well-resourced and attention is focused on the deliverables. I want to make it very clear that this refers to the partnerships agreements that prioritize economic development and growth. And considering Toronto's diversity, friendship agreements should absolutely be maintained and, in our personal opinion, not capped, to prioritize the city's historic and cultural connections, but of course be kept separate from the partnership agreement and its objectives. And with that, I will turn it over to Lee.
Thank you, Riley. So I would like to, I'd like to take you through a bit of a success story, which, although it's not a city-to-city partnership, I think it does highlight some of the opportunities that a strong city-to-city partnership can provide. And it comes out of the World Trade Center Toronto and the city collaborating over the last 2 years in a large number of international trade-focused programs, from trade training to actually activating in markets. And so specifically speaking about a trip, trade mission to Shanghai, which occurred last May, we took 11 food and beverage companies to Shanghai to meet with a number of program folks there who would be able to support growth of Toronto businesses into that region. And we participated with the city. Mike Williams was able to travel with us on this session. And we provided a number of sessions that include things like market-specific education, which we need to do in every market we go to, site tours to places like Alibaba and Super G grocery chain, which is a high-end, mostly imported product chain in China, where we were able to work with the buyers, take these companies to have meetings with the buyers, then go right into the chains themselves and look specifically at what their products would look like on those shelves. And also the key to success of any of this type of engagement, really strong B2B meetings, meeting with people that can distribute for you, can help you understand how to manage in those markets. And then we also attended Seattle, and it's quite often that as we go to one of these missions, we will anchor it around a strong show. So looking at some of the success, 9 months later, only 9 months later, the 11 companies that went on this mission reported some results to us. On average, they've grown their revenue by 61% since that time. They project growth of 145% within the next 3 years for their revenue, their top-line revenue, and they have been hiring. In particular, there are a couple of examples here. Golden Ontario doubled their weekly shipments of red meat to China. They were already in China, but they didn't have all the relationships they needed to grow that business. And another great example, Socialite Vodka, an excellent Toronto firm, obtained new sales of $1 million, which effectively doubled the size of their business for the last year. Okay, so again, that was not specifically an international partnership, more of a one-off trade mission, but what we would like to propose is leveraging that same type of effort into something that is a more ongoing program. And as Relly mentioned, supported by JP Morgan, what we'd like to do is try to bring this kind of economic growth focus to a new pilot international partnership, specifically focused on smart cities technologies. We suggest leveraging the report's recommendations, entering a time-bound agreement with another leading international city to share and exchange knowledge of each city's procurement needs and solutions from each city's innovating businesses. Explaining Toronto's needs, and in terms of explaining Toronto's needs, we're able to leverage the work that's already been done in the Smart Cities Challenge. And we also believe that this exchange will bring about collaborative opportunities between the businesses themselves, as always occurs in these cases. So our first suggestion is to consider Paris or Barcelona, each of whom have expressed interest in participating and are advanced in smart cities planning, and each of whom are cities that the city has been engaged with both at the councillor level through Deputy Mayor Thompson and others, and at the senior city level through Mike Williams and others and his staff as well. So these relationships have been developed over time. The World Trade Center has also participated, and our feeling is that with either one of those amazing world-leading cities in the smart cities side, we'd be able to develop an amazing relationship, which I'll tell you a little bit more about what I'm thinking. And the idea being that we would formally announce this and launch it at the Smart Cities Expo World Congress in Barcelona, which is in November of this year, 2019. The other thing is that we can leverage the great work that's been done by the city on smart cities and by World Trade Center. So Natasha Apollonova in policy at the Board of Trade and Susan Vegas, a city staff, have worked tirelessly over the last 3 years to build an amazing smart cities ecosystem. I don't think Susan's in the room, but I know Natasha is. It has included things like the Smart Cities Summit, which happens every year. This year, we're planning to do that summit in partnership with Elevate TO, the tech conference that's also supported by the city, so another really great collaborative opportunity. And we can also leverage work that's been done on the Smart Cities ecosystem recently, which is you see on the board, which relates to and partly takes into account a report that was recently commissioned from Deloitte by the city and the board. So there's a whole lot of background we can use to make a really strong pitch. The value proposition for the city, I think the final note here is that there is significant opportunity. It leverages international relationships that city councillors and senior staff have been developing, as I talked about. It also brings the possibility of innovative solutions to some of our urban challenges in Toronto. And there are people out there with innovations. There are also local many local businesses in the Smart Cities ecosystem with incredible innovative solutions, all which are part of a database that's been developed in that Smart Cities ecosystem here. And what we can do is we can help our businesses connect with opportunities abroad, bring some of those innovative solutions from abroad to here, share those procurement and planning, the city urban development planning with each other, and help local firms grow both through business elsewhere and through collaborative opportunities with the foreign businesses.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Smout. Our questions? Councillor Carroll.
Yes, I'm going to be asking this question of staff, but when I read the whole report, there's the proposal you just outlined, but you also raise the issue of our resources, that we have all these partnerships, but we don't actually resource our International Alliance program enough to do. If I was to act on all of the components of the report, we would want to take a couple of relationships that we have and set a time-bound focus on it and be working on those. We would want to be doing a review to look at the meaningfulness of some of the long-standing relationships, and there's a certain amount of resource attached to if you are going to proceed to wind them down. Would your suggestion be that we, even if it's for a time-bound period of time, further resource this department so that they can get done? Often it's being done by one person, two persons, side of the desk, that sort of thing.
I think our point was always to use those resources effectively and make the most out of them by tying them with current initiatives already led by the city. So additional resources are always more than welcome. And a dedicated staff person for each, for example, partnership agreement would be ideal so that they can manage that relationship throughout that time period. We're also offering an opportunity to sort of literally pilot these principles and see if the agreement makes more sense for the city and produces different results. And we already have the support of JP Morgan, which was a very, very generous grant, to put that in place. And we would love to be able to show those results for the city.
Right. You also highlight the idea of sometimes the overture might be made to the city, but it doesn't necessarily require that we set up a city-to-city relationship. Maybe they've knocked on our door, but it's between post-secondary institutions, or it's just a connection that needs to happen for a period of time between sectors, things like that. We don't have a track record of resourcing even that, because I've had people approach me and want to have a relationship for another city, and the answer is no, we've got enough relationships right now. So how do we make sure that the answer is not just no, we're not doing city-city relationships, that there's someone who's going to look at, but why are you asking? And maybe we can facilitate a partnership between the interests that need to facilitate. Is that something that the Board of Trade or World Trade Center Toronto could help us with?
Yeah, absolutely. The first recommendation to the city is to act as a catalyst for exactly the relationships that you are talking about. And that's just to sort of provide some guidance for any city building institution that is looking to create those partnerships internationally. And they already exist with some colleges and universities here. Yeah. But it's about applying these principles that will, in our opinion, would make more effective partnerships that can actually then track results, report those results, and then build on those relationships and activities.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Grimes, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just going to, where do I have my notes here? So we have sister relationships, friendships, and MOUs. What is the difference with and I know we have 26 plus.
We're not in the staff question.
Okay, so what are the differences between sister, friendship, and MOU?
In their opinion.
In your opinion.
So according to the policy framework for the International Alliance Program, it only looks at partnership and friendship cities. Partnership agreements are supposed to be with the goal of economic development predominantly. Friendship agreements are more symbolic in their nature. And considering that Toronto's diversity is its strength, and we have 50% or more at this point of our population being visible minority, we think that symbolic agreement is really important, but the partnership agreement is the one that we really want to focus on because it's about driving economic development and growth for the city. The MOUs are, I believe, something that started around 2008, and they fall outside of the policy framework. But as Councillor Carroll mentioned, there is a limit of 10 for the official number of partnership agreements, which that was set back in 2005. And our call is just to have another look at that policy framework and see what makes sense for the city at this point in time.
Yeah, so on the partnerships, you mentioned we have time, detailed objectives that we meet. What are how long of a timeline would that be? Would that be 3 years, 2 years, years, 5 years? And you measure that. So give me an example of a low range or a high range, or is there a whole bunch of different ranges in there?
Internationally, they tend to be between 3 and 5 years.
And how many of those are we meeting? Do you know how many are meeting all the objectives?
That's a good question.
Don't know?
We can get back to you with some of the best examples that we've seen internationally and share that with the committee and staff.
And then if we're not meeting them, you talk about a sunset clause. How do you bring that to our partners and say, listen, we're not meeting our objectives? It's kind of a conversation we're going to be moving on. Is that? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to add to that, I think the question is probably for staff about how the specific agreements and whether they're meeting those. But my understanding is that the current agreements that are in place are not time-bound. And that wasn't really an objective at the time. And it's one of the recommendations we're bringing, that it's important to do that because it does force that opportunity to review whether they're meeting your objectives or not and to actually take action. And if you enter into one on those terms, the partners at the other side understand that too. And there's no opportunity for offense or so on. It's a matter of, well, these are the things we're going to achieve. Are we achieving them? If we're not, then maybe we should all think about whether there are other better opportunities for each of us.
And just one short one. On that's a great story, the 11 beverage companies took over to China. Like, how do we tell that story better? That's a great story. How do we get our story out there better than what we're doing?
Well, thanks for that question too. I think, first of all, I think one of the things is measuring. So one of the challenges has been, I think, for a long time now, how do we measure success and what is the success we're looking for? And I think that's one of the things about these kind of agreements too. If we lay out from the beginning what we think we want to achieve, then we'll know what we need to measure. We'll talk about how to measure it. So in our case, we've hired a business insights manager to take this on as a full-time task. And that's why now we're able to start to show those results. In terms of how we get that word out there better, I think that's a job we have to all collaborate on. We are certainly highlighting those folks in our onboard magazine as an example and trying to get it out into social media and so on. And the wonderful thing about those stories is each story means so much more than all the stats you can put out there. You can just tell one, you can spend an hour with a room and tell a whole bunch of stats and tell one story, and what they all remember after is the story. So I do agree with you. We have to find a better way to do it.
Well, keep up the great work and look forward to your second presentation to this committee. So awesome work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grimes. Are there any further questions for our panel? Okay. Seeing none, thank you both. But you'll stick around, right? So, because we'll have speakers later. Now, an opportunity for members to ask staff questions. So we'll start with Councillor Carroll first. Councillor Carroll, you have 5 minutes.
Yes. Oh, 5 minutes? Oh, I got to make it count. Short answers, please. Mr. No. So this report really is a precursor to the review you're working on yourself. So when might we see that, for starters?
So the work that the city's doing is at all the international programs, which includes the protocol office and the city manager's office. That'll be later this year.
Oh, okay. So in the meantime, how much resource do you have to put to this? Because it seems like it falls into several categories, and the Shanghai story sort of underlines it. We have all these relationships, some of which it sometimes seems like we have the relationship so that every year we can announce how long we've had this relationship, and isn't that great? Well, people come in and make overtures that they would like to be in a partnership with us or in an MOU or a friendship situation. And it seems to me there's the cap we set, but there's also an issue of staff resource, because it takes a considerable amount. If you are going to make it a meaningful partnership, such as the report describes, and I expect you'll describe that as an aspiration in your own report, then really we're looking at a restructuring that requires this to be more of just, okay, this invitation has come to us. Say it's Susan Vega or whomever, go and make this trip happen. if we're really going to look at it and really wet it to all our objectives, you need a little more resources to do that, do you not?
Right, and I just want to clarify on the resources question. Raleigh mentioned that the budget for the International Alliance Program was close to $1 million. That's our budget for everything we do internationally.
Yeah.
Not just our partner and sister and friendship cities. So, which we spend out of pocket about $200,000, and maybe when you cobble all the corners of desks together, you might get one person out of it.
Right, which means when we accept an invitation, say Barcelona is interested, if we accept that invitation, we're really trying to punch way above our weight.
Right, and so their suggestion of partnerships helps leverage. And then we need to look within the city, which is what we're doing right now. And so this is a timely report from that point of view, as to whether we can reassign or maybe take some of the corners and make a person out of it.
Yes.
But resourcing will always be difficult here because the time commitment to send somebody somewhere is always 3-4 days, unless it's to somewhere in the U.S. At a minimum. So all of these balancing items have to be done.
So this report, the mention it makes of, it doesn't always have to be our partnership, that one, that's what really got me thinking. The example is you also have a report due on the folks that came through my office to the city on Shenzhen City. And at the heart of their interest in that is really a partnership that they want between the post-secondary. They have a huge inner-city campus that has those challenges, and we have a huge inner-city campus. And so that's what's really going on with the contingent that I'm working with and that want this. So is it possible, in the absence of being able to enlarge this, and would you even want to, is it possible to at the very least, take the approach of having a sort of concierge approach, so that when we have an approach like that and we say, we'll have to wait a year to give you a yes, or the answer is just plain no because of the cap we imposed upon ourselves, that there's someone who can just do the concierge work of sitting down with them and getting them to, what is the partnership about? Let us facilitate who you should be working with. That doesn't require a trip or anything. It just requires a person that's dedicated to that task here.
I agree totally with you, Councillor, that leveraging those contexts. I mean, all our universities, all our colleges spend a lot of time overseas because they all have huge foreign student bodies that they're recruiting. But they also have huge research interests that they share. And there are research partnerships between universities. And we facilitated, just to your point, one between a university just outside Tokyo and York University, for instance.
Right.
So that is one of the ways of stretching our dollars, and totally agree with you. It's a good strategy.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, I know with sister friendship and MOUs, there's 26 plus. So how many sister cities do we have?
4.
4.
Sorry, 6 sister cities.
Sister city, and how many friendship agreements do we have? Just
All right, we have no sister cities. We have 6 friendship cities, 4 partner cities, and 25 or so memorandums of understanding.
right. And we are measuring, any idea on the partnership? We have the 4. Are we meeting our objective on those 4?
Sorry, I didn't catch
On
that.
the partnership agreements we have, no, who are that? That'd be Sagamihara?
So the partner are Chongqing, Frankfurt, Chicago, and Milan.
Oh, okay. And are we meeting our objectives with are we measuring and are we meeting our objectives with these?
I don't think we're maximizing our return.
No? Mike, we have the Collision Conference coming here to Exhibition Place. It'll be the largest high-tech conference in the world. Are we reaching out to to these cities and inviting them to Toronto?
Yes, we are, because one of the big things about Collision is to bring delegations. I think we already have commitments from about 40 different places.
Wow.
And we have put out invites to all of these groups. We also invite them to the Global Forum of the Americas that comes in the fall for a sort of parallel session. So we're leveraging a little bit those ways. I think you'll see Collision. So for instance, one of the cities that we're talking to about an MOU is Lisbon, which is where the Collision's parent conference is, called Web Summit. they're thinking they're going to bring 100 people here from Lisbon. So that's a phenomenal leveraging of both the partner city concept, forget about the word partner, which the detailed partner, but with Toronto. And we're a global city. We need to connect with the globe. So
So we're getting a lot of interest in the collision conference?
correct.
Okay, and just quickly, how are we getting this story out that we're bringing the world to Toronto in June? How do we get this story
So
out?
we're doing it in a lot of different ways. I'm happy to go offline with you, Councillor,
okay.
if you want it.
Thank you.
We're
Those are my
doing a
questions.
great job on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grimes. Councillor Lai?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I just heard that we don't have any sister city. Is that true?
No, we have 6.
Sister city.
Yeah, no, sorry. Sister city for the obvious reason of the gender thing, we don't use that phrase. So we use the phrase
Or maybe
partner
brother city
city
or something.
and friendship city.
We've learned.
There are other communities that call them sister cities.
Yes,
We just don't
yes.
call them sister.
Because I heard that the sister cities were Chongqing or something.
Yes,
So,
we are, with Chongqing, we are a friendship city.
And then Frankfurt, did you say, in Chicago? And the fourth one is
Milan in Italy.
where?
Milan in Italy.
Oh, Milan, okay. We were told by the presentation that there were no expiry date or any kind of a time frame.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. That's my question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lai. Just a couple of quick ones for Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, we are working on an agreement with Paris at the moment, are we not?
Yes.
And we have been working and trying to develop that enhanced relationship with Barcelona.
Yes.
And we have you and I have been talking about essentially what we're talking about here today, which is a complete review as to what we've been doing and to see what works and what doesn't work and to determine which of the relationship will enhance opportunity for us, equally ensuring that opportunity is enhanced for our partner relationship.
Correct.
Right. And would you say that, and I know that Mr. Smout has spoken about success, but by and large, our success is of no real interest to the media, would you say? All right, let me answer that for you, yes. Sorry. Because it appears that it only with the media particularly, and there's a conversation with our citizens to reflect, to suggest that, I think the term that's used when we travel, it's called junket, right? Which is to give a pejorative which says that there's really no benefit in terms of associated with the work that we're trying to do. And so would you agree, though, that we really need to continue doing this work, which is the point of the presentation?
Yes, totally. And so that, from that perspective, welcome
Yes.
the report from the World Trade Center. We are, as I said to Councillor Grimes, we are a world city. We need to trade and connect with the world. We have more than half our citizens and residents from outside of this, born outside of this country. We need to reflect that in the work we do. But most importantly, our culture will advance for these connections and our economic development will advance for these connections. Jobs will come, as Lee just described, two examples. And you yourself had talked about the example of Greenland a lot from China. So I think there's a huge payback that we've already had. Can we do a better job? Yes, we can always do a better job.
And Greenland has invested over $2 billion in our city. And I guess, I'm not sure what the cost for my hotel stay was, but I'm sure it's a lot less than $2 billion. Just saying. Okay, to speak. Councillor Carroll?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My reason for asking that this report be on the agenda is it does come in advance of a review that's already going on of our department, but it has good advice. And what I'm hoping is that staff take it to heart. No one's saying here that we shouldn't have an international program, but there is definitely a much more modern, a much more metrics-based approach to it that is building in the world, in world cities. And in that respect, I think Mr. Williams would admit that we are behind. And it's partly a resource issue, and I don't mean a resource issue in we need some more plane tickets. I mean, if you're going to embark on this, what are the resources that you're having here at the home office? So that we're not only doing this work, but we're far more transparent about it, and we are applying metrics, applying time objectives. I'm literally convinced from I've only been on one trade mission. If I have one criticism, it's that we don't make a big enough effort to spread out amongst council how we do this work. With respect, it doesn't always have to be the chair plus. It can be, who is working this file. Film sector, we just had the film sector person come and sit beside Councillor Lai. Things like that. All of those are things we can look at, but at the end of the day, it will always come into question, and we will possibly reinvent wheels or make mistakes repeatedly because we didn't measure it. We didn't have clear objectives so that we can tick boxes when we get back or not tick them and therefore change our strategies. We're not going to constantly renew and improve and improve and improve the way we do in so many other parts of the organization, simply because there's a robust enough administration sitting here at the office when they return to be able to do that reporting out. We get quick reports out from trade missions, but it's really hard to say to Mr. Williams, knowing that it really is a corner of the desk thing. We want a comprehensive report, and we want it to not just say we did these things this year, but we want it to propose a strategy for next year. We want it to give us an update on each of the alliances. People are hitting a website. You can just hit international alliances on our website and know who the cities are. You don't need to ask Mr. Williams at the course of a committee meeting. They're all there. But do we every year hear back, what do we do in Ho Chi Minh City? What do we do in Milan? If we didn't do anything, do we send them a Christmas card? Did they send us one? Do we at least have that going on? We're not getting that because we're not resourcing them to give us that. And if we're going to do a reorganization, if we're looking at that again in this International Alliance Program and how we manage the MOUs as part of it, I think as a committee, we have to decide we're going to invest in it if we're going to do it. Because we'll always be vulnerable to criticism unless we set objectives, measure them, and report out on them comprehensively. And that takes staff resource. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Anyone else to speak? Okay, seeing none. I have a motion I'd like to ask the clerk to put on the screen. And essentially it's to refer this item to the General Manager of Economic Development and Culture for a review and a report back to the Economic and Community Development Committee in the third quarter of 2019. Members, this presentation, I want to thank Mr. Smout again and Raleigh for the presentation. It's timely in that the General Manager and I have been having these similar discussions. We know that cities around the world are leading their economic development and enhanced prosperities. It's actually not the national governments that are actually doing this. What I think we have been, Councillor Carroll, particularly as the comments you make, I think we've been afraid. We've been afraid to ask for the FTEs that we need in order to build on the initiative of the programs that we want to action out in order to bring greater prosperity for the city. I say that we're afraid in the sense because we are buttressed between the bookends of the budget and the scenarios that we actually have, where we have certain percentage factor that we have to meet, and we have limitations to that and so on. And the question is, what gets left out? And so I think as members of this committee, as long as you're willing to stand with the GM and his request for more resources to speak to what we're talking about here today, because as a city, we have a great opportunity actually to expand our brand globally. And it is perfect that other members should be part of that narrative in terms of expanding our brand and seeking out opportunities and to sell our city globally. I was just showing the mayor this morning an ad that was in the New York Times over the weekend, and it was about the announcement that was made regarding University of Toronto, the $100 million donation by Mr. Schwartz and Ritzman regarding the development of the University of Toronto site there. And in that New York Times ad, it really reflects positively on the City of Toronto and showcased that partnership. The partnership that the GM spoke about with Ryerson University, UFT, all our college, George Brown, Seneca, Centennial, et cetera, and our BIAs as well, right? All of those elements are extremely important. And I'll give you an example. So we were in Hong Kong and we met with the owner of the Delta Chelsea Hotel, and they're looking at doing some interesting things there. And in my meeting with him, we seeked out a meeting with him, and they had not proposed to do a development that they are going to do. Because they were going to go to London and Los Angeles and potentially San Francisco. When I raised it with the owner, I said, well, you know, Toronto, you have facilities in Toronto. Why not look at the new concept? And when we talked a little bit about it, I indicated that there'd be a great relationship with Ryerson University because they're just located across the street. When I talked with the Dr. Latchme, who is the head of Ryerson University, about this opportunity and so on, and he indicated he was going to go to Hong Kong and he wanted to have the contact. We provided him with that contact. That relationship now is fostering and developing. That will create prosperity and a huge amount of benefits for Toronto citizen. Most people would not be aware of the connection and so on, and that's it. So I think we do the body of the work, not so much for accolades and so on, but in fact, just so that we can get things done on behalf of our residents to create the opportunity of prosperity and so on. There's no doubt in my mind that we need to do a better job, and that's a discussion I've been having now for the last number of months with the general manager, and he is open to it, so that the presentation is very timely from the WTC. We are talking with Paris. In fact, I met recently with the Consul General of France to Toronto about this ongoing discussion. I think we're pretty close. Barcelona is similar. And I know that we are going to take a delegation to Barcelona for the Smart City Summit that's taking place there. And it relates to the points that Mr. Smout has actually made, because it's going to create opportunity for us. And there are huge benefits to be realized by our citizens, which I believe that's part of the work that we're here to do. Certainly would hope that people would report out more about the success and the things that we're doing here. So, members, we have the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smout and Mr. Raleigh. Thank you very much. We're moving right along. EC 3.4, review of dementia care-based models. We have a number of speakers. I'll just get my speaking list here. And we have we have speakers, but we have a presentation first. And so we will be having the presentation by staff. Let me know when you're ready. I will start your time. Thank you. Good morning. So we have 4 speakers.
Okay. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, Deputy Mayor, good morning. I'm Via Malia. I'm the Interim General Manager for Long-Term Care Homes and Services, and thank you for receiving our information report on the review of dementia care-based models. Our division are leaders in excellence and groundbreaking services for healthy aging. And over the last 2 years, over the last actually 2 decades, we have continued to evolve our approach to care to ensure our residents are receiving care and services that are individualized, that are effective, and that are person-centered. Regardless of cognition, regardless of their cognitive states. They are treated with compassion, dignity, and respect. We recognize the importance of a model of care that is flexible and is inclusive of the needs of all of our residents. Residents, families, and staff members are partners in care. They are included in decision-making, drive innovation, and unique methods to achieve the positive outcomes that our residents benefit from. We're also committed to continuous improvement. We can learn from others, but others have learned and continue to learn from us. Thank you for the opportunity as well of presenting a 2.5-minute video capturing the life in our homes, our residents' lives. You will see our caring, professional, skilled, dedicated staff as they enhance the quality of life of residents in our homes. Right after the video, Dr. Pat Armstrong, the independent external consultant who investigated the various models and approaches to care, will provide a brief summary of her and her team's findings. I'd also like to take this opportunity of introducing Dana Tulk, Director of Management Services, and Dr. Pat Armstrong. The video.
There are 10 municipally operated long-term care homes in Toronto, caring for some of the city's most vulnerable residents. With an aging population and increasing acuity, there's a growing demand for specialized services to meet complex care needs, including physical frailties and cognitive impairments. As leaders in excellence and groundbreaking services for healthy aging, long-term care homes and services staff have received formal training on most of the leading practices that best support residents with dementia. This includes PIECES, You First, Gentle Care, Dementiability, Gentle Persuasion, Montessori, and the Butterfly Household Model. Our expert staff use these techniques to customize treatment to address the needs of each individual resident. Our homes are home to a diverse group of individuals from different backgrounds with varying health needs. The average age of a resident is 85 years, of which 69% have moderate to very severe cognitive impairment. Most have dementia, and more than half exhibit aggressive behavior symptoms. 90% use mobility devices and require extensive assistance with the activities of daily living. Residents come from 70 countries of origin, speak 59 languages or dialects, and practice 43 different faiths and denominations. We believe that care is best built and maintained through strong partnerships with other healthcare organizations and community partners. We have a long-established volunteer program. By inviting community volunteers into our homes, we ensure an ongoing connection to the surrounding community. The foundation of compassionate care is relationship and commitment. Every staff member is accountable for their own actions and takes ownership for providing safe care and service. Each person entrusted to our care is treated and respected as an individual. Staff value contributions and are open to different views and perspectives. Care lives here, and all are welcome.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, councillors, and others in the room for this opportunity. The 7 of us who prepared this report have been working together on as part of a large international team that has been researching long-term residential care in 6 different countries for 10 years. We're not done yet, I don't think. And this research is very much informed by that project. We were contracted to create a narrative chart comparing predominant models of care and to review the literature that evaluates them, and to consult with a wide range of those familiar with city homes. In doing so, we were guided by 3 basic questions. First, what do the homes do well now? Secondly, what needs improvement? Thirdly, would the butterfly approach help, or would some other approach be more appropriate? We went about our work in 5 different ways. We carried out a literature review on models of care and on the research assessing the models. We conducted interviews with key informants, some identified by the city and some by us. We attended the full range of regular city managerial meetings organized for the city homes, as well as meetings with some resident and family councils within homes. We spent 2 full days observing and consulting with the entire range of people who live, work, volunteer, and visit in 2 different city homes. And we visited 4 other city homes for meetings, interviews, and tours, as well as the Peel home that adopted the butterfly approach. Our review of models explains that for more than a quarter century, there's been a movement in North America to transform long-term residential care by fundamentally altering not only the values, but also the organization, the work, and the physical structure. We identified 4 common themes in all of these culture change models. All stress the importance of care relationships that take individual capacities and interests into account. They all call for flexibility for both residents and staff, which in turn requires some autonomy for staff and some flexibility in the division of labor. All support changes in physical environments, emphasizing home-like spaces, and almost all of them say small home-like spaces. And finally, all maintain that leadership is essential to put these principles in place and in practice. The evaluations of models provide uneven and sometimes contradictory results, although all models show some success in improving the quality of care being provided, and they all involve higher staff to resident ratios than we have in the Toronto homes or in any homes in Ontario. There is some suggestion that models can become more rigid over time. Moreover, the primary focus of some of them is dementia care, and it's important to remember that there's still a significant number of people in the city homes who don't have dementia. Our review of the interviews, consultations, and observations concludes that there's a great deal of sympathy for the general principles found in the models, especially for the need to focus on understanding care as a relationship. Most recognize the importance of knowing about the person and paying attention to individual resident needs, capacities, and emotions. Many staff members emphasize that this approach is an essential part of their health-related education. Moreover, there is agreement that the focus should be on care processes rather than on tasks, and on the social as well as the clinical aspects of care. However, the overwhelming majority of those we consulted stressed 2 things. First, one size does not fit all when it comes to models of care, so no single model should be adopted. Second, staffing levels must go up in order to maintain the current quality and must go up even higher in order to improve it. We heard repeatedly that staff members want to do the right thing, but time, structures, and other policy restraints limit their capacity to do so. With more staff, they could focus less on tasks and clinical interventions. At a minimum, care as a relationship requires more staff, continuity in staff, and time to care. We also heard and saw that city homes have tried many of the approaches identified in the culture change models and have developed some innovative strategies of their own, as Via just said. Indeed, we heard much that is positive about the city homes, but there are also suggestions for change and concerns about the ability to put principles into practice without structural and staff changes. We organized our recommendations around the central themes that we found in the models, some of which I want to highlight here. First, take advantage of having 10 homes to learn from and with each other, as well as to share with other homes practices and approaches that are effective. Some of that happens now, but we think more could be. Promote greater flexibility and teamwork, encouraging each home and each unit to apply strategies that allow greater autonomy for and consultation with staff, residents, volunteers, and families. Third, provide more continuous hands-on education, not only for staff, but also for managers, residents, families, and volunteers. Fourth, provide more opportunities for people outside the home to be part of the home, starting with reopening the cafeterias. I know this is going to be a big debate. Let me end with another important point. Although home-like is a common goal of all of the culture change models, as a number of different informants pointed out, we seldom ask what is good about communal living or whose home we're representing. When we did ask this question at the Residents' Council meeting, the response was, there are good things about a home, 3 good things. Safety was one, company rather than loneliness was another, and activities rather than sitting alone at home watching television. And I think that on this basis, it's really important for us to start to think more creatively about the positive aspects of communal living rather than focusing on trying to simply replicate homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, it does.
Ah, fantastic. Okay, thank you very much. Questions? No, I think we should probably just ask questions of the staff are here, and then we'll go depths after, and then we'll be concluding. Questions? Okay. Councillor Carroll.
I'm sorry that I had to step out in the middle of the presentation, but I want to focus in on, to consult with the residents' councils is very important, but it sets you apart from talking to people who struggle the most, who need really intensive nursing care and health care, because you get people that are more active and probably are taking advantage of the activities are the ones that will come to the residents' council. How did you utilize staff to do, or did you utilize staff to get at what's the experience of the person who needs so much care they're not really able to give input in a question and answer way?
Partly to address that, although I must say we had a very short time in which to do this project. We went into 2 different homes for 2 full days, starting at 7 o'clock in the morning and leaving after midnight. And we talked to everyone who came in, who lived there, and who worked there, and who volunteered there. And so in that process, we did talk to some of those residents.
Right.
Who were, and we were in the behavioral support unit, for instance, at one home.
Right, okay.
So we did try and capture that really underreported group of people, for sure.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be sure of that.
And I should say we didn't do formal interviews with them, or we would have had to go through someone who could give us the right to do that. We talked to a lot of them and observed them and interacted with them.
And did staff talk about the fact, I mean, we're talking about dementia care, but there is a struggle in the healthcare system. As someone arrives in a home, if they've had other health issues, dementia may be a factor, and yet they don't have a formal diagnosis. And then it's up to staff to glean it and deal with it. Did they talk about that there's a certain amount they can do and a certain amount that they need the healthcare system to do a little more for them?
We didn't hear so much about the healthcare system doing more for them, but we did hear that we want more continuous hands-on education. Interestingly, we also heard from families, both in family councils and when we were in the 4 days we spent in homes, from families that they would like to know more about other people's health issues. They didn't want an individual's diagnosis, but families spend a lot of time in these homes, as we have said, and they want to know.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, exactly. But they want education too. They want more education. They get some education now, but they want more about aspects of the different forms of dementia, for instance, the different capacities of people with dementia, and including something they could apply with the individual people they interact with.
I ask only because, that's my personal experience that we're right in the middle of still dealing with now. My father's entry is healthcare, long hospital stay over more physical things. But then when he arrived in the long-term care home, he doesn't have a formal diagnosis of dementia. And yet, you know, we know from, you know, our experience with others. And that was the feedback. I had that conversation with a nurse, and she said, often that's the hot spot that we're put in. They arrive without that diagnosis, but we know we have to employ all the things we know about that kind of care after we've spent 1 week with the person. And then they have to go back and ask the healthcare system to finish your work, please. This diagnosis would help us continue on with their care.
Well, it's interesting you should raise this. Our current research project is called Changing Places. And it's about that whole entry process and what changes and what needs to change.
But that would help us run better services, yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Anyone else question? Councillor Lai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just wanted to know whether this is a City of Toronto initiated research report, or because I see the York University here.
Yes, it was a consultant's report, but it was handled through York University.
So you represent York University, or you're the head of the research team, right?
I'm the head of the research team, and it's there are 2 people from Carleton University, 1 person from Trent University, and the rest of us are at York.
Yes. Well, I really, what caught my eye was about your findings. You know, one of them is that one size does not fit all for any model of care. And I'm looking at the research team here, and you know, given the 50% of Toronto residents are born outside of Toronto, I'm just wondering whether you have given whether any of your research team members will reflect this kind of diversity of the residents of Toronto.
Well, Albert Banerjee does, but we paid particular attention in our report to exactly that question, and it's one of the reasons we would argue that one model, one size doesn't fit all. There's an incredibly diverse population in the city homes, as you know, and that was one of the issues that we paid particular attention to. And the 2 homes we spent the 4 days in have very diverse populations, and it was something we highlighted very much with the family councils, the residence councils, and with the staff and volunteers that we talked with. Yes. And that's part of one of our recommendations is that while there certainly are relationships with communities right now in terms of the homes, that there could be much more kind of daily interaction with the communities that people come from and with individuals from those communities that they come back from. It's one of the reasons we make the argument, I know that's not necessarily very popular, about bringing back the cafeterias. 4 of the homes had cafeterias, and we were told by a number of people who had been around at that time that this was people from that community could come in and have lunch, and we've seen this actually in Norway and Sweden very commonly, and that brings a mixture from the community you came from into the home on a more regular basis.
Yeah, more specifically, I don't see any research team members that are from the Asian community.
No.
And the reason I'm saying that, I'm asking the question, was that I actually attended the National Caregivers Day yesterday.
Well, it depends on whether you call India Asia or not, I suppose.
Well, I actually spoke to some people from the Alzheimer's Society, and I mean, I didn't even know about this, but they told me that people with Alzheimer's disease, Alzheimer's dementia, the people that are from Hong Kong is so much different than the people that are from Toronto. You treat them like, you know, like you said, there's no model that fit all. But I'm just saying that the question I wanted to raise is that, you know, perhaps maybe I don't see any Asian in this research team report here. Maybe perhaps you can consider in future to be.
Well, we have certainly taken up the question of the diversity. I mean, there are a lot of different kinds of people from very many different countries, and it became quite clear as well that you can't assume that because 2 people are from the Ukraine, that they will get along, because they may be from very, very different kinds of communities in the Ukraine. Or even one example we were given at another place we were in was that they put two German-speaking people together on the assumption that they would get along, and they found out that one of them was Jewish and his parents had been killed in the Holocaust, and the woman had been in the Nazi Party. You know, like, I think that we always have to be very conscious of where people come from and what they're, and it's one of the reasons that we feel very strongly that one model doesn't fit, because we have to be able to accommodate the very many communities that are there. And if we tried to create a research team that represented all those communities, it would be pretty hard.
Well, I'm not saying all of them.
Last question, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm not saying that all of them, but I'm just want to just make a suggestion that maybe, you know, a representative one from the Asian community. That's all I'm asking for, just for future purposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Anyone else? Joe? Any question, Mark? No? Just a couple for me, and I realize that this study titled Model for Long-Term Residential Care, and you've got two of the main findings that you've got. The one size does not fit all, as Councillor Lai has actually spoken about. You talked a little bit about the staffing level, but let me ask, when you looked at our 10 facilities, how does that compare? Because they're private facilities as well. I would imagine that...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
There are private facilities as well. Mm-hmm. I would imagine that in terms of your consideration of our 10 facilities, that you would have some background information as it relates to how some of the private facilities operate, and how do we rate with respect to that overall, I guess, level of satisfaction is one, obviously, but just in terms of our 10 homes. I think I understand how they rate, but I wanted to see if you could, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are they?
Well, we weren't doing a comparison between these homes and other homes. I'm not quite sure what you mean by private. Our larger research project that has taken us into all homes that all have a significant amount of public funding.
Right.
In Ontario, there are homes that are for-profit homes that are corporate, for-profit homes that are small, for-profit homes that are not-for-profit, mainly church-run or
right.
community-run organizations. All of them receive virtually the same kind of funding, except there's some difference with the city, and that's in the city's part of this report. If you look overall at the research on municipal versus homes of different ownership, if you're classifying those that receive funding, the municipal and nonprofit homes come out better on virtually all indicators consistently.
Okay. Now, with respect to the butterfly model, help me to understand this. Now, I understand that there was a visit to a home in, was it Brampton that you visited?
In Peel.
It's in Peel, that they use that, is that the principal model that they use versus what we use, which we use a more comprehensive, we use a series of different initiatives. We don't rely on the butterfly model exclusively, is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And so was it that you were being asked to look at the butterfly model? I mean, there was an article in the, I think, the Toronto Star some time ago that spoke to that. And I don't really remember all that the article stated, and so, but the impression that I had was that that was a model that we needed to be looking at to implement in Toronto, which your finding is suggesting as the one size does not fit all, which would seem to suggest not to pursue that route. Is that correct? Right. And where does the butterfly model come from?
It comes from the UK, and in fact, we were in a home, one of the homes we studied in the UK 4 years ago, and have just been back in recently, was one of the early butterfly model places. And I've been in the Peel, we've been in the Peel home as well.
Right. You indicated it came from the UK, and I understood Australia was a component part of that as well.
Well, they have, my understanding is now the Salvation Army in Australia owns it.
Right, and they're charging a specific fee. I was told $1 million for the rights to use.
No, 100,000, I think it is.
It's 100,000,
Yes.
okay, because the $1 million kind of got my attention.
Well, I think that there's a discussion about additional costs, but 100,000 is the initial cost for
Okay,
transforming your home.
right, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, there are no further questions of you. Thank you. Okay, so we are now going to go to speakers. I'll just give you a moment to vacate the area there. The first speaker I have on my list is Greg Shaw, International Federation of Aging, IFA. Mr. Shaw? Good morning.
Good morning.
You'll have 5 minutes to speak, sir.
Deputy Mayor, councillors, thank you for giving me the opportunity. My name is Greg Shaw. I'm the Director of International and Corporate Relations with the International Federation on Aging. We're a membership-based organisation based here in Canada, but we have members in 75 countries across the world, which include municipal governments, federal governments, state governments, academia, NGOs from the broad range and a broad sector. We have formal consultative status with the UN and working agreements with the World Health Organization. We do a lot of work globally around trying to improve outcomes and health benefits for older people globally. My interest in this particular topic is one that probably goes back 30 years for me. As a Deputy Minister with the Federal Health Department in Australia, back in those days, we looked at national dementia care and dementia support services globally to look at improving and implementing systems. As the consultants have already mentioned, there's a number of systems or models that have been in place for a number of decades. The butterfly approach is but one and a reasonably new one. And you were right when you heard the $1 million, because it's $100,000 per home. So that's probably where you got your $1 million from. It's also £2,000 for initial training. Then there's formal costs on accreditation processes on an annual basis. But if we look at the principles behind some of these models, whether it's the Eden alternative, whether it's the butterfly approach, whether it's the Abbeyfield model of care, they all are built on principles of dignity, trust, love, all sorts of things which you would expect in any model of care. And for a review to be undertaken or to be considered, and the butterfly approach to be considered, one's got to ask, is there a problem in the homes that the city currently runs? And I would probably argue that there's not. They adopt many of the principles of many of the models from across the globe. And I'm yet to see any accreditation reports which really criticise city homes around their support for residents with dementia care. So we need to consider, how do we support residents with dementia in homes? How can we provide better outcomes? And it's those principles of design and the principles of those models of care that needs to be adopted first and foremost, not any one particular system. I take the consultants' comments about needing to increase staff resources to be effective in providing support for dementia care. And to a degree, that's true. But you've also got to consider other opportunities. And when I think about infrastructure opportunities around building design, technology, how do we free up staff time to enable them to provide their caring role as a primary carer of residents in dementia care? So I think we can't just say increasing staffing is the only answer. We need to consider how technology and different infrastructure or different design can actually improve the time staff spend with residents. It's a really important component of looking at the holistic approach to care, and it's including your environment that you actually working within. So I think there's some opportunities for the city beyond adopting the butterfly model or household approach, but still doing what you're doing well. And look at those reviews or look at perhaps implementing or changing the accreditation or standards approach that you have to try and ensure resident outcomes are the main priority and focus for those with dementia. So I commend the city for its review, but I also commend the city and its homes for the work that they currently do in supporting people with dementia care.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your comments, sir. Are there any questions for Mr. Shaw? Seeing none. I would just like to make the comment, sir, that if you don't mind, I'm going to add into my motion the technology and design piece, incorporating the staff piece as well. So I hope you don't mind me borrowing that from you. Okay. Thank you kindly.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jeanette Rowan. Ms. Rowan? Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. Today, as you meet to discuss various methods of delivery in long-term care, such as Butterfly, I have asked to come before you to tell you of my experience with one of this city's homes. From January 2000 to the present, I have been involved with Seven Oaks as a volunteer, a family member, and a community representative. As a volunteer, I sit in the executive committee as co-vice president. I'm convener of pastoral care, the volunteer representative on the home's palliative care committee, member of the end-of-life team. I help in feeding, and I take part in various other activities. In August 2015, my husband, Ed, because of advancing dementia, became a resident of Seven Oaks, and my interaction with the home changed. I was no longer just a volunteer helping staff and residents. I was a family member, negotiating the frightening, complex, and cruel and unknown world of a cruel illness. I had always been aware how difficult and demanding this job was, and had observed how patient and caring staff were under trying conditions, and insufficient time to accomplish required tasks. Now, it was Ed's turn to be the recipient of this care. The many good programs the home offers, theater and musical performances, celebrating special events such as birthdays, Easter, Christmas, etc., some of which I had been part of implementing through volunteer funding, now took on a special meaning. The patio in Ed's unit allowed him, in conjunction with the recreation and other staff members, to participate in the care of plants and flowers, to join other residents for outdoor lunch or afternoon snacks, or just to spend time listening to music and socializing. Ed and I had always been outdoor folk, enjoying many similar hours in our own backyard. He had never been an outgoing social individual, usually sitting back and listening. But during parties or musical events, staff and volunteers succeeded in getting him to participate in activities, example dancing, like I and my family had never observed during our 60-plus years of marriage. Ed would even dance down the hallway to the strains of music emanating from a worship service. The Therapeutic Pets program awakened memories of our own pet dog, Linus, sing-along, memories of golden oldies. If I had a concern, I always knew there would be a listening ear, be it the administrator, support, or nursing staff. I know that I was not always easy to deal with. My heart was ruling my head. I would cease being the cooperative, willing, and invariably pleasant volunteer. Instead, I was an upset, angry family member. To their credit, staff continued to treat me with utmost respect and understanding. And in the words of a PSW, with a hug, Jan, we are all human. During this period, I became a member of the Family Council, serving one term as chairperson. I continue to be a sitting member, as I am of the opinion that those of us who have walked this difficult road can be of support to those beginning this journey. After Ed's death in 2016, I decided to continue my advocacy role and asked to be a committee representative on the Home Advisory Committee, and I'm presently serving as interim chair. Here I have the opportunity to interact with the Residents' Council, Family Council, Volunteer Association, the homes partners in the wider community, Pathways, Scarborough Health Network, and Hunt's Healthcare, in addition to the administrative staff. I am having the opportunity to observe the administrative side of long-term care, obtaining a better understanding of what goes on behind the scenes, ensuring a smooth running of this facility. Not an easy task. I have the utmost respect for those steering that ship. Yes, there is always room for improvement, and the implementation of better methods to improve quality of life for those individuals who call long-term care their home. However, I wish to emphasize that my association with Seven Oaks, though not always perfect, has been positive. Hence, I continue to be an active participant in this community. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much for your remarks, ma'am. Are there any questions? Okay. Ms. Rowan, there's questions of you, ma'am. Councillor Carroll.
Yes, and thank you for your volunteer service and staying on there now. That's I don't think I've ever heard of that before. So tell me, you said that their K-Bidet PSW had to give you a hug and say, we're only human. Is that an issue of struggling to keep up with the demand? Yeah.
Yes, it was, and part of it was my interaction with this particular PSW. Mm-hmm. If I could enlarge a little bit, the PSWs in our homes, most of them are not full-time, and they may be working 3 other jobs in 3 different homes because they need a salary, a more fuller salary than just a part-time salary. And this particular woman, I discovered later, had many stresses in her own life with her own family. She was working 3 jobs. And when she came on, maybe she was tired. And I had had a tough day with Ed. I was trying to cope with something I knew nothing about, and I was short with her. Yeah. And eventually one day my daughter said to me, "Mom, you realize her job is difficult." And it dawned on me, yes, I knew that. And I went back to her and I said to her, "I'm sorry." And she then put her arms around me and she said, "Jan, we're all human."
You've raised another important point. During our most recent budget process, there are a number of services where people said we're increasing the use of part-times. In long-term care, they weren't really the star of the show, but they're one of many where they said there's a lot of part-time work here. And for some people, that's a convenience, that part-time may be the only time they can take away from their family, but by and large, they needed a full-time wage, and we're cobbling it together. So that's your overarching experience in talking to them?
Yes, that definitely is it. And some of them have been there for many years, and they're still not full-time staff. They're still temporary, classified temporary or part-time. This is one of the most difficult things that my observation working with staff. First of all, I want to say, I work in Seven Oaks, as I've said. We have a tremendous staff in Seven Oaks. Our recreation ladies are awesome. They go over and beyond to help the residents. They think of everything that could possibly draw residents out. But it's working with dementia parent residents is very difficult. Yes. Been the spouse of a dementia person, I can't begin to tell you how difficult it is. There's also a large level of guilt. Why, like my husband would say to me, "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you putting me here?" So I'm trying to cope with helping him, helping other residents, because as I said, I feed. And it can take as long as 1 hour to feed a person. And one particular staff member may have 5 such residents. When I go in on a Wednesday morning, I am the only volunteer that was qualified because the rules changed several years ago.
Right.
I was qualified to feed. I'm welcome with open arms. Even some of the residents will say to me, Jan, we know it's Wednesday, you're here. If I go another day, it's not Wednesday. But these are all contributing to staff stress.
Yes.
They cannot meet the demand.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Grimes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question, but Mrs. Rowan,
Yes.
you've gone over and above yourself, and on behalf of this committee, I just want to thank you for volunteering. Volunteering, makes the world go round, and
I get more out of it than I give.
well, listen, you're doing God's work, and we need more people in the world like you. So thank you for everything you do on behalf of the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rowan. Our next speaker is Tamara Fernandez. Tamara Fernandez. Tamara, there you are. You have 5 minutes. I'll start your clock when you're all settled. Let me know when you're settled.
Okay. This is my first time.
No worries. Well, take your time and welcome. You have 5 minutes to speak, and then members of the committee may ask you questions and so on, but you may not ask them questions. But if you're ready.
Okay.
Thank you.
I didn't actually plan to speak on this item. I'm here primarily to speak on another item. But when I saw that this discussion was taking place, I did want to provide some observations from my own experience. My name is Tamar Fernandez. I'm a resident and a homeowner in the city of Toronto. I was born in East York General Hospital almost 60 years ago. I lived my early years in Scarborough, my teens and my 20s in North York and what is now Toronto St. Paul's. And for the past 30 years, I've been a resident in Etobicoke, currently living in Ward 3. My mother is 91 years old, and she has dementia. She has a formal diagnosis, and she currently lives in Humber Heights Retirement Home, which is on Lawrence between Royal York and Scarlett. It's not city-run, it's privately run. I wanted to share the model that they have at Humber Heights because it's been wonderful for my mother. I agree with the statements that there isn't one size fits all, but I think they have a very unique approach, very much in line with the idea of the benefits of a communal design for care, and I just wanted to share a little bit about that. So Humber Heights Retirement Home, as I understand it, and I haven't spent a lot of time looking into how it's run, but, well, I mean, the company is run, but it's Schlegel Villages Incorporated. And I believe they operate out of Waterloo, but they have retirement homes and run long-term care facilities in many different places in the province, including in the city of Toronto. They are affiliated, from what I'm aware of, with the University of Waterloo Research Center for Aging, and their programming is informed by, is evidence informed. So the design of Humber Heights is a village. They have a main street, they have a library, they have a cafe, they have a general store, they have a salon, they have like a restaurant. Their dining facilities are designed along the lines of a restaurant. They have a pub, they have a fireside lounge. And they have a lot of really great programming, and much of the programming is focused on care for people with dementia. My mother is not in a segregated area for dementia, people with dementia. She is in a general community space, which I think is really great. There's a sense of community there that I think is really important for her to be able to feel like she is, happy and comfortable and, still living, having a good quality of life. And the design is also built around, there's a central courtyard so that even with dementia, she can go outside, safely go outside. There's a pond. They have ducks in the springtime with little ducklings. And all of that really does seem like a village. And there's always, whenever I'm there with my mother, there's always another resident who's with her. So even though she gets very anxious when she's not sure where she is and what she's doing in the place she's at, there's always somebody with her to help guide her and take care of her, and they're not always staff. They really, I don't know how they do it, but they build connections with residents, which I think is really important and really has helped my mother to maintain a good quality of life.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Fernandez? Okay, there are no questions of you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mark Smith, Toronto Seniors Forum. Mr. Smith, good day. I believe you've been in these chambers, these committee room before?
I've been here a few times.
Yes, exactly. You're familiar.
And you're going to see a lot of me over the next couple of months, too.
Nice. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, councillors, Mr. Brillinger. I'm here at the Toronto Seniors Forum as one of the co-chairs. We're a PAB within the city structure for seniors issues. I'm here to say that the Toronto Seniors Forum completely embraces the idea of the butterfly. It's the only way to go. And I'm going to make this personal at this point, like the last two speakers, because I have to drive home a point that dementia isn't Alzheimer's. It's a deeper care that's needed. Florence Mary Smith was born in Oshawa, raised on Niagara Street down the street here. Admittedly shy, but very, very outgoing when it came to music and dancing. Her only real dream was to have a piano, which she bought when she was 50 years old and taught herself how to play. She married Mike Smith, my father, and moved to Edmonton to raise a family, had 4 boys. After the 4th boy was born, she went into the workforce, back into the workforce, and was immediately fired. She was fired because she protested the fact she was passed over for a job. That didn't discourage her. She went in and became a community activist, quickly becoming the national president for the JSETs, and establishing, being the voice in establishing the Edmonton School for the Blind, even though she had nobody blind in her family. The mother that I knew was different than the mother everybody else knew. And I discovered that when I came home one day from elementary school and I had to step over television cables because she was being interviewed in the living room on some new issue that she was championing. She went through life sort of taking on challenges, being very, very outspoken. She started a company with my father and became the first woman in Alberta who was registered to own and manage 2 construction companies and registered within the Alberta Construction Association. She continued that dynamic lifestyle all the way through, even through to the end. When she was about 65, she started telling us that her brain wasn't working the way it should be. And it wasn't until about 5 years later, when she was 70, that it became noticeable. And she was diagnosed. And from that point forward, she slowly started disappearing. Not so much of the person who she was, the dynamic dancing woman who did things, but her cognitive values started disappearing. She went from 70 to 35, 35 to 18, 18 to 9, 9 to 5, 5 to 4, 4 to 3, 2, so just disappearing, slowly disappearing. But all the time, within that time frame, she still played the piano. Much to the horror of most of us, she would pull out the sheet music and play the first chord and then go into 2-year-old jazz hands and play for 5 minutes and turn around and look for the applause. She would go into her CD collection and pull out a Strauss CD and put it on full blast and grab my father, and they'd push the furniture out of the living room and they would dance for hours. it got to a point where we had to start, we realized that she couldn't be cared for by my father anymore or by us because we lived too far away. So we started looking for homes for her. And that was difficult because she had dementia and we wanted to have her care like a butterfly approach. But we couldn't find it. It was all Alzheimer's wards, and we knew that wasn't going to work. So we kept searching, but again, through all this, she was still very engaging. Even though I lived here, my brother lived in Santiago, she would phone us for an hour every day and still have conversations for an hour. Conversations became just basically one-word conversations that she would speak repeatedly over and over and over again for half an hour to an hour. Shiny, 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 meaning it was raining or snowing out. Or lovely, 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 meaning she was having a good day. But it would go on and on and on like that. When we finally found a home for her to move into, she was moved and she changed. The care wasn't there for her, the interaction wasn't there for her. My father would have to drive 15 miles every day, which he did every single day. He took the dog. As soon as my mom would see the dog, she'd put on her jacket, put on her boots, and they'd go for an hour-long walk in the forest. She'd come back, and then she'd be despondent, and she'd just sit in her room.
We're at 5 minutes, so I'll give you 30 seconds.
Okay, so I'll go real quickly. So what I'm hoping to deliver here is that dementia needs a little bit more hands-on care than most. She declined very, very quickly. But see, she still made the phone calls, and I have to add, just with this one last little piece here, is after about an hour of shiny, shiny, shiny one day, I interrupted her and I said, Mom, I have to go to a meeting. And she paused, and she said her last full sentence to me, and this is very poignant for what I think we're looking at here today. Her whole last full sentence was, well, you take care, and I will take some too.
Thank you, sir.
And that's what we have to listen to here. So.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms.? Okay. There are no questions of you, sir. Okay. All right. To speak, Councillor Carroll.
I didn't plan it this way, but it's turning out this way. Every item want to talk about resources. I just hope that this conversation is remembered when we get to budget time once again. These are some of the things, and I think what's really important is that the people that have come today demonstrate who is in our long-term care homes, and that is to say everyone. The way the long-term care system works now, some people I think, oh, the city runs them so that the people who have nothing and no one, or the people who end up in the city run. That's not the way the system works at all. You can end up in any one of the range now because of the way the LHIN has been running the both privately run and city run, and they're all trying to do the same job. To say that long-term care homes are short-staffed, I think 'twas ever thus. You're never going to have enough. What you'd like is to have a PSW with each patient all day long, and that would be the perfect world. And that's not going to be the case. But we are at a situation that is consistent across all homes, ours and the others, where we know what the models of care are. We have all the research. We have active volunteer members bearing witness that we've heard, and family members bearing witness that they need more to do the dementia care work. And I don't think we should feel badly that we're really at the moment giving it short shrift. We're facing a new need. I go back always to the story that the director of the hospital in my ward said. He said, the crisis I face is not from your growing population, the people who live in your condominiums. I've been a doctor for almost 40 years now, and I used to see a 100-year-old 4 or 5 times a year. I have 600-year-olds upstairs in this small hospital right now. And the same is true in our long-term care homes. People are checking in because they have dementia, but they are living a long time and needing a lot of care. And when you have this much research that tells you what proper care is, we really have to pay close attention to this when the budget comes. We did all the work to figure out the campus of care model, 2 deputy city managers ago, and what we need to do on a capital basis. When I toured 12 homes in January for my father, 2 of the city homes I was very, very ashamed of because of their capital facility shape. And they're at the top of the list to be rebuilt. We're just not putting the money into it. We need the province to come to the board. We should be shouting and screaming at them about the capital piece, and we've got to pay attention to the operating piece. Because while we share this responsibility with the province, while we're running it for them, the reason the province has us run them is they hope that municipalities will set the bar. And while it looks like we're all scrambling on the operating side, private and city run, staff-wise, on the capital side, we're dropping the ball. We need to start yelling about that, because we can put these care models together, but it is a very easy thing to go to long-term care and find out what's the capital list, what are the homes that are in capital crisis, that are far too small or badly designed to be delivering what they're delivering, and they've got the list. They would jump tomorrow and start fixing them. So I'm very glad that we now know that what we need is a hybrid of all these care models, but we're gonna have to put the bodies behind it and improve the facilities in which we're delivering it. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you to the deputants who came and in particular for sharing their stories, and to our city staff for the work that's come in and the findings that have been found. We have an aging population in this city, and in fact, by 2041, the number of Torontonians over the age of 65 is going to double. Yeah. And so if the task of government, both us and the province, is to ensure that we care for people, ensuring that those who are aging can live in dignity must be at the top of that list. And I think we all could tell our own stories. I certainly have mine. And so how do we improve care? And I think we've seen some of the findings and we've heard some of the deputants. We need a holistic model. We need an appropriate staffing complement to provide that level of dignity in care. And we need to ensure that on a capital side, both the design and the infrastructure supports that. And so I'll simply close my brief remarks by thanking the city's seniors advocate, Councillor Matlow, who has been working tirelessly on this file and has put forward some ideas. And I know that our chair has incorporated those and is coming forward with a motion that I will be supporting wholeheartedly to ensure that as we carry on and as the report comes back from our staff, that we are able to provide that holistic care with the staffing complement that is required and the capital improvements that are certainly a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. Anyone else speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll speak for a moment. I have a motion that Councillor Cressy has just referenced. The motion will be on the screen in a sec. The motion, first of all, seeks to address some of the commentary that, pardon? Yes, thank you. Thank you. The motion seeks to address some of the commentaries that we've heard from the speakers and comments that colleagues have made. I've also incorporated, Councillor Matlow had some recommendations as part of his communications to this committee. There were some elements of it that I particularly didn't think sort of fit the larger narrative of our discussion, but I think that we've been able to incorporate the essential themes of his recommendation, which I think he'll be happy with, and so on. So the motion is in front of you there, and we'll deal with that in a moment. But I wanted to thank all of the people who have come to speak, and particularly on the personal nature of your stories, because those help us to even understand further. I've recently been tasked with the responsibility of the community development piece on the chair, and so the long-term care homes are part of that portfolio. I've had a chance to visit a number of homes. I've visited the Seven Oaks, and it's very nice. I'd like to go again for a deeper dive. And just 2 weeks ago, I was at the Bendale Acres, and I see the work that's there, particularly 10,000 plus hours that volunteers are putting in. And Ms. Ronan, you're right. There's a tremendous stress on everybody, particularly the staff who are being asked to care for our most vulnerable citizens, quite frankly. You know, they have laid a foundation for us that we are enjoying today, and I think it's really incumbent on us to ensure that their twilight years or the golden years are not one that is rooted in being, you know, not being well treated or not being well cared for. I want to also just acknowledge our tremendous interim General Manager for long-term care, Ms. Malia. The work that you've done, and I know that you've taken over in a retirement capacity and so on, but I've had some time to work with you, and I see the energy, I see the passion that comes from you and your team and so on, and I'm absolutely bowled over by that because I expected more stress and so on, and I didn't see that. But that stress can come if we don't seek to address and alleviate some of the challenges that you're experiencing now, is we need to be ahead of this as opposed to behind, because being behind does not allow us to provide the level of dignity and care and trust and love and building that connection that was spoken about earlier on and so on. I note that it's really important that other levels of government, particularly the provincial level of government, is aware as to the direction that we're going, because it really can't just be about money. It really has to be about the dignity and the lives that we want our most vulnerable citizens to live, because they are we and we are them. So it's really important that at some point we're all be in a position, and I think it's important for us to address this systematically in going forward, and it can't be a matter of we don't have the resources to invest, because if we don't have the resources to invest, those who have built the infrastructure and have given us much of the prosperity and the opportunities that we have gotten today, then we have failed them and they haven't failed us. So I don't think that equates. So we need to ensure that we don't fail them. We need to be much more responsible in terms of addressing the needs and so on that are in place and so on. So it's really important for us to do that. So the motion's there, and I know that Councillor Lai, because we did talk a little bit about the provincial piece, and you have a motion to cover that piece. So I'll then turn the floor over to you and give you the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hear everybody says here is, you know, I really agree with my colleagues here and other deputants, you know, because I have my own story, because my mom suffered from dementia 6 years before passing away last year, and I cannot relate more to what everybody is talking about here. And when I first was elected to council, I see that the city is doing this job. You know, healthcare is supposed to be the province job to do it, but you know, I'm actually very proud that the city actually took the leadership to care about our seniors, and you know, rather than just waiting for the province to drop the ball. And sometimes, you know, we only have 10 city-owned long-term care homes in Toronto, but I think the demand, you know, is way more, because as we're growing older, I put my mother actually in a private long-term care home, and we need to do a lot more. So this is my motion right here, is just to make sure that the province is aware of what we're doing as a city, and then they should be actually, it's not all about money, we know that, but you know, it will help if we get some money from them to subsidize our budget and to take care of the long-term care. So this is just the motion on the floor I'm putting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. This package? Okay, are we good? Okay, we're going to take both motions together. You have seen and read them. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Members, I think we have an opportunity to, in the next matter, to at least start with having the first speaker. We'll be breaking at 12:30. I'll be recessing at 12:30. So we're going to move to the next item, which is EC 3.5, City of Toronto's Refugee Capacity Plan. And I have the first speaker is, I think it's Ann Woolger, Matthew House, Toronto. Are you here, Ann? Oh, great, thank you. So you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Say the second speaker listed, Sam Chase, we're together.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, we're part of the same coalition of refugee houses.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, I'd like him to go first, and then I'll follow along, and then we could do questions after, if that's...
Okay, fair enough, folks. Go ahead, please.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Sam Chase. I'm Executive Director of Christie Refugee Welcome Center. So we're a City of Toronto shelter that specializes in housing refugee claimant families. So these are the refugees who come to Canada who aren't sponsored. They aren't sponsored by government or private groups. They arrive to make a claim, so they're essentially homeless when they arrive. There's a scene from the movie version of Lord of the Rings, I don't know if it's in the actual book, where Frodo, who's a small, seemingly powerless hobbit, who is carrying the Ring of Power into the danger of Mount Doom, is thinking of the dangerous times that they live in. And he says to Gandalf, who's the wizard who's leading the group, Frodo says, "I wish this had not happened in my time." And Gandalf responds, "So do I, Frodo, and so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we get to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." Well, the times we live in are difficult, right? I read recently that there are more refugees now than were produced during World War II. Globally, there is an increase in fear and protectionism. There are collapsed states and there's civil conflicts. And this has resulted in the stunning statistic that today, 1 out of every 11 human beings who is alive is displaced. 1 out of 11. They've had to flee their homes because of danger. And now for years, Canada has been relatively insulated from global refugee flows. I mean, with the Arctic to the north, no one wants to come across that, got oceans on either side, and we have the US to the south. But in the past few years, we have started to experience what much of the world has known for a much longer time, significantly larger numbers of displaced people fleeing to us for safety. And I say all this just to make one point, which is this, that what we've seen in the last couple of years is not going to go away. It will ebb and flow, there will be fluctuations, but if the fluctuations used to be down here, now they're going to be up here. I just don't see the geopolitical landscape of our world moving towards less conflict over the next while. The refugee capacity plan that you see before you is a really good start. It establishes the structures and interfaces between various groups so that important things can get done. Appendix A, which is the plan itself, is the equivalent of building a car so you are ready to go somewhere. But now we need to go somewhere, and that's what pages 6 and 7 are about. And if you look at pages 6 and 7, it's where the car needs to go. There are 3 big ideas: a 24/7 refugee reception and referral center, that's so that no matter when someone arrives in the City of Toronto, they get referral and the right information as soon as possible. The second thing is creating flexibility in the emergency shelter system. We need a higher baseline number, but we also need the ability to be able to scale up and scale down as ebbs and flows do come. And finally, transitional housing. People arrive who've been traumatized. They often aren't ready to move into permanent housing yet, but we don't want them stuck in a shelter either. So if we can develop a continuum of housing so they can move out with supports and then into permanent housing, we can relieve a lot of the stress on the shelter system. So the car is in Appendix A. Where we need to go is on pages 6 and 7. And on behalf of the Toronto Coalition of Refugee Shelters and Houses, we want to express our support for the direction laid out on pages 6 and 7. Anne and I represent many more people. We recognize that the City of Toronto can't do this all by themselves. We recognize that other levels of government and the for-profit sector and the non-profit sector need to step to the table. But these are the times we live in. There's nothing we can do about the times, but we can decide what we're going to do about the times. And perhaps the next step is to put together a group that is tasked with moving forward with the strategies on pages 6 and 7. We always feel short of money, but Canada is one of the richest countries on the planet, so it's partly a matter of perspective. We would implore you not to leave this sitting on a shelf gathering dust after you've looked at it. but to actually take action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just before you speak, Ann, members, if I can just ask for a motion just to allow the completion of the speakers, and then we can break. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. You may begin.
And also, just to let you know, the third person on the list, Francisco Rico, unfortunately will not be coming.
Okay.
So we're the last in a sense.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, my name is Ann Woolger, and I'm the founder of Matthew House, a community of 4 homes here in the city that welcome and assist newly arrived refugee claimants. I have been working with refugee claimants, asylum seekers, for the past 30 years here in Toronto. I therefore have a very intimate knowledge of the issues they are facing, as I've helped with the hands-on resettlement of over 4,000 refugee claimants who would otherwise be homeless in our city. Therefore, I also want to express my great joy that this issue is finally being addressed by the city in a way that includes consultations with experts and in the field and takes a forward-thinking approach. So we really applaud that. After 30 years, I've always felt like a voice crying in the wilderness that refugee claimants often get lost, they're coming, but the issues aren't properly being addressed. We as mentioned, we as a coalition of refugee shelters support these recommendations, as my colleague has said. And we support all of them. The one that I would like to particularly speak to today, just to underline the great need, is the proposal of having a 24/7 reception and referral center. This is something that I feel quite passionate about, having seen what I've seen over the last many years. It is so vital because currently there is just no system in place that properly and effectively catches all the refugee claimants who are in need and ensures they get the support that they need. And if I could just tell a couple brief stories. Almost 30 years ago, I remember getting a call. I was working an overnight shift, actually originally at a city-run homeless shelter. And I got a call in the middle of the night from an RCMP officer who had found, he said, "I'm sorry to bother you. I feel very sorry for this woman, but I found," he was at Pearson Airport, and he had found a woman wandering through the halls of Pearson Airport. She was crying, she was lost. She had a 4-year-old child with her, and she was about 8 months pregnant. He said she couldn't speak English. Eventually, he looked at her papers and realized she was a refugee claimant from Sudan and had asked for asylum, 8 hours earlier, but she didn't know where to go, where to turn for help, and she was just wandering through the halls. I could tell many, many other stories of people who have spent their first night sleeping on benches at the airport or benches in parks in Toronto because they haven't gotten the right directions. Some are brought into the city by agents, but then they're just dumped on the street. We run 2 homes now with unaccompanied minors, and many of them have just been dumped on Bloor Street, left alone with nothing but the clothes on their back, and they don't know where to turn for help. They are very, very vulnerable to exploitation. And therefore, and some of them otherwise are sent to homeless shelters that are not geared to the specific needs of refugee claimants, and that in itself can sometimes be very re-traumatizing for refugee claimants. And so that is the problem. There has never been a coordinated system in place. And so this proposal of a 24/7 shelter would solve that, as it would help with the vital initial needs to make sure everyone gets the right information they need at the start and be referred to safe places and be told where they can turn for help. I must confess also, as a visionary, and I know Chris and others know this, I even have a dream that this could be even bigger than just that 24/7, that it could be a central hub where like-minded individuals, there could be all kinds of levels of services, such as, counseling services, Canadian Centre for Victims of Torture, legal services, medical services, and then there could be programs like academic programs. It could be a think tank for refugee solutions. I actually call it Sanctuary City Center. And it could be an incredible place where people could rub shoulders.
You wrap up for me, please, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. Well, and they could meet each other. And in short, my final words, if I can just say my final words.
Go ahead.
As the most multicultural city in the world, should we not seize the opportunity to create a beacon to the world of humane, coordinated, and thoughtful refugee reception that would create a vibrant community space where refugees and Torontonians meet face to face and work together to make our city, our nation, and our world a more welcoming place for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? No, okay, no, later on. We'll do that after lunch. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation.
Are there no questions?
Oh, sorry.
Or do we come back?
I just had one, and it was of Mr. Chase. Who developed that statistic? 1 out of every 11 human beings is.
It's on the UNHCR, United Nations High Commission of Refugees website. So displaced, technically, if you escape within your country, you're not technically a refugee or displaced. So the number they have, this is from 2017 now, is 68.5 million displaced persons on the planet. I don't have something that's more recent, but it's on their website.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be back at 1:30.
And so there are no questions? Or do we need to?
Not for us.
Oh.
Yeah, so we can go.